Good evening, residents of Litchfield. As the chair of the Litchfield School Board, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of COVID-19 pandemic, and in accordance with the governor's emergency order number 12 pursuant to executive order 2020-04, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. Please note that there is no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting, which was authorized pursuant to the governor's emergency order. However, in accordance with the emergency order, I am confirming we are providing public access to this meeting by telephone and additional access possibilities by video and other electronic means. We are utilizing Google Meet for the electronic meeting. All members of the Litchfield School Board have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during the meet through this platform, and the public has access to contemporaneously listen and, if necessary, participate in this meeting through dialing the phone number 1-877-309-2073. Is it still the same number?
Same number? Yes.
The password is 578-005-989, or by clicking on the following website address, Litchfield Community TV. Providing public notice of necessary information for accessing the meeting. We previously gave notice to the public the necessary information for accessing this meeting, including how to access the meeting telephonically. Instructions have also been provided on the website in Litchfield School Board at Litchfield School Board agendas. Providing a mechanism for public to alert public body during the meeting if there is a problem with access. If anybody has a problem, please email Christina Harrison at charrison@litchfieldsd.org or Michelle E. Flynn at meflynn@litchfieldsd.org. In the event the public is unable to access this meeting, the meeting will be adjourned and rescheduled. Please note that all votes will be taken during the meeting shall be done by roll call. I'd now like to start the meeting by checking attendance of board members. Tina?
Present.
Rob?
Here.
Tara?
Here.
Liz?
Here.
Thank you. And Brian Burke here. I'd like to begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Do we have any
Excuse me,
Yep.
Brian,
Yes.
can you read the passcode again? I have a person we just received an email, said it's a different passcode than that is on the agenda.
Okay. Now, let me check what's on the agenda because I read it from my report.
Jason, do you have the passcode?
For the go-to meeting? The meeting ID number.
No.
For the phone?
Yep, for the phone. It's, the meeting ID is 193-518-629.
And so I have it changes each time.
It will, yeah, it'll change,
Okay.
sorry.
So I'm sorry, the passcode is 193-518-629.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, that's different from what I had. Yeah.
Is that person able to get on, Liz?
I don't know, I just sent them an email back. We'll see.
Michelle, are you able to, on the fly,
Let me see if I can
adjust?
I have that passcode one more time?
Yeah, 193-518-629.
193, what was the second three?
518.
Okay, let me read it back. 193-518-629.
Correct.
Okay, let me, go into my post.
And since we've read that, we've had several people join the phone call, so we can see the number of callers that are there, and we're up to how many, Jason? 2. We're up to 2, so that's better than 0.
So it's working.
This says, why can't public get in? What does that mean? I don't know. Successfully on. Thank you.
Okay, I apologize for that. I was using last week's or 2 weeks ago number. All right. So we have no revisions?
There were a couple of revisions. If you look at the online agenda, there were a few things that have been added in to the report, to the agenda today. So I think the board has had links that we've livened up during the day, so we just posted those for the board.
Okay. All right.
Oh, I have another person who can't dial in. All right. Let me see.
I'm getting there.
All right.
Oh, you're going to put it out there?
I am, as soon as I can get into the, it's just really slow right now.
Good thing we started at 5 so we can start at 6.
I emailed Michelle all of that.
All right, first I'm gonna edit the content. I'm gonna edit the calendar page so that everybody can see it on the, if they go to the event calendar.
Where's that?
It's on the district website.
On district
All right, here we go.
site.
The phone number. Now, the phone number to call in is the one that was in my email, right?
Yes.
The one that I just sent you, yeah.
Let me make sure I got the right number here.
Jason, the call-in number stays the same.
It may change, but it was whatever information,
Yeah.
should be the information sent on Monday. But if not, I just sent all.
Oh, there it is. Okay. All right. That was a different one than I had before. Okay, 1-877 309 2073. Access code is 193 518 629. Okay, now if people go to the event calendar, they will see the number to call in and they will see the passcode.
All
And
right.
I'll revise the agenda as well.
All right. Is Tina there?
She is.
Is she muted?
She is.
Yes, Liz, was there a question?
No, you've been quiet.
Yeah, I'm trying to find all the things. Set up
Awesome.
the-
That first email person got in. I have 2 other people checking the event calendar now.
Okay.
We'll give them a few minutes then.
Check. No.
No one said anything about it.
Liz, did you get an email from Stein 898?
Yes.
So me?
I just
I didn't want
responded.
to. No, I'm kidding.
No one's complaining, but I mean, last time we did see you.
I think it goes wonkier when I do that, but I will do it.
Nobody complains. I would do the same thing you're doing. No worries.
All set?
Did you go out of it?
I don't think so.
I can see Chloe, Tina, Michelle, and Dr. Jetty.
Aren't you lucky?
The call ended because the connection was lost. Here we go again.
Chloe, do you have grid on yours? You can just go. Do you see all of us at once?
I have grid on mine, but I can only see 6 of you.
Oh,
That was happening to me today in my meetings. I could only see 5 people, but in like earlier this week, I could see everyone in my class.
And that's what Miss Whitman said.
Yeah, I was having the same problem today. Right now, I can only see 5.
Yeah, right now I can only see 6, which is really weird.
I can only see 4.
I can see 4 too.
Brian's back.
You can, huh?
Wow.
All right.
All right. So why don't we get started? Summary of non-public actions from April 1st, 2020. Mrs. Harrison made a motion to approve the non-public minutes of March 18th, 2020. Mrs. McDonald second. The motion carried by roll call. Mr. Burke, yes. Mrs. Harrison, yes. Mr. Myers, yes. Mrs. McDonald, yes. Mrs. Hershberger, yes. That will bring us to recognitions, which we do not have any this evening. So it'll bring us to correspondence.
Well, we have had a lot of correspondence in the last 2 weeks. So what I've done is I've kind of gone through all of the correspondence pertaining to one topic. And if it's okay, I'll list the people that have sent an input regarding that topic. I forwarded all of the emails to the board and to Michelle, I believe. So if I read a name, Michelle, that you haven't received, can you just let me know?
Absolutely.
I'll make sure that I get those to you.
No problem.
So to start with, regarding Travis Tucker's Facebook post last week, I believe it was. I can't remember what day it is, so we'll see how accurate that is. But we also, regarding the decision not to run AP Bio for next school year, we had 4 parents, 11 students, and 2 alum send in letters to the school board in favor, urging us to reconsider running AP Bio, and to reconsider. Some of them spoke about running AP courses in general. So for the ones who cited AP Bio specifically, many of them cited past practice has been that we've run the course with a lower number of students. I think 8 and 6 were mentioned. In this particular case, AP Bio has not run for the last, it wasn't run this year, and it will run next year, which means that rising juniors and rising seniors will not have an opportunity to take that class. The rising seniors, most of them were enrolled in chemistry, which is a prerequisite for AP Bio, so they wouldn't have had the chance to take it at school at all. Almost all of them cited the impact on their college application process, the importance of that high rigor coursework in preparing them for the college experience, and the concern of getting into the college of their choices and the financial aid, with the financial aid that would occur if they had the opportunity to take AP Bio. They shared the concern that AP Lab Sciences online don't provide the same kind of education as a classroom course held at school, and night classes would limit their ability to participate in co-curriculars and hold jobs, which again many schools look at in their application process. Some cited that without running AP Bio, if their students aren't able to take AP Bio next year, they won't qualify for a diploma with distinction, which is something that they've been working to attain over the last 4 years. And that the decision to not run the course came down 2 months after course selection. So students had been kind of relying on taking that class and had assumed, I guess, or were told that it would be run. And then after 2 months of kind of limbo, it was decided it wouldn't be run. AP courses in general, actually, Mrs. Meg Cuvalier cited our mission statement and our core values, and quoted that we strive to provide rigor and the highest level of growth for all of our students, intellectually and academically, socially, emotionally, and physically. And our mission is to prepare these kids for college and career. And in cutting AP courses and higher level courses in general, we are not fulfilling our mission statement. They cited that several of them said that these students are self-directed learners who can achieve their personal best, but we need to maintain those opportunities. That short-term cuts in AP and higher level courses kind of indicate where our priorities are as budgetary concerns come in, and as classes at the high school continue to decline. Are we limiting ourselves? Are we limiting our students in the wrong ways when we should be encouraging them to take higher level courses? And they're concerned for student preparedness for college and high stakes testing if these classes don't run. So that's kind of the AP Bio correspondence in a nutshell. Like I said, I believe all of you have received those letters that for you to read and kind of guide our conversation today. And then there were three other letters. Well, two parents, Keith Buxton sent in a letter regarding an email regarding remote learning, and his concern is mostly that students, specifically high school students, have been left to teach themselves. He suggests that we should maintain our regular school day schedule, and that assignments should be assigned on the correct block days when students would normally be attending that class. Instead, some teachers have been assigning work every day of the week. And he cites a lack of direct instruction from teachers and more independent assignments, and questions whether that's really the teaching that should be happening while we're at remote learning. An email from Tracy Madden says it reports that students are concerned as well. It's not just parents with these concerns. Students are very concerned because of the lack of direct instruction, preparedness for next year. I think a lot of students feel like they're at a disadvantage, and having remote learning for 3 to 4 months will set them back a great deal next year. And if there's a plan to kind of figure out where we go from here so that instruction is more guided and direct from teachers. And I've actually heard from my student kind of concerns are along the same lines. So I think parents and students are, and Tracy was specifically CHS as well. And then I had, there was an email from Jenny Eisenbeis regarding Adopt a Senior idea to help support our graduating seniors this year, since everything is kind of up in the air for them and the end of the year activities are on hold. So that included a link that I sent to, she just moved from Garland, Texas. So there was a link to a news story from Garland, Texas about that idea, and thought it might be something that we might want to implement.
Tina, where did you forward that email? Did that go to the high school admin?
No, I sent it to Michelle, I think, and to the board, but I can forward it to Anna.
Yes, I forwarded it to you, Mike, and Jason.
Okay, I just want to make sure we get it in the high school admin team's hands, because they, I know they're actively meeting with seniors and just planning out what this is going to look like. So I don't know what's in that link, but it sounds they would be interested in
I
it.
didn't have a chance to look at it, but I think it might be, It sounds positive.
We'll get it to Bill.
A very recent email that I did forward to all of you from the first grade teachers, and they kind of providing input regarding enrollment for next year and urging us to keep the 5th grade 1 class based on kind of where we're ending up this school year and what position that puts us in for next year. That's it for public comment. So thank you everybody for sending in your submissions, and it was nice to get emails.
All right. Thank you. That will bring us to superintendent comments.
So a couple of comments, follow up from the last board meeting. So the naming of the Philip K. Martin Auditorium. So I reached out to Carolyn Late and Bill Lonigan and this was an inquiry that came from somebody in the public. I think it was a student last year who was just sort of following up to find out when it would be formally named. And Carolyn had indicated that they had done the event with Phil's family at the winter concert, but it was prior to the vote by the public to make it official. But their sense was that the family was sort of viewed it as like they've done their piece with it. They want to be really cautious not to be ripping the scab off the wound over and over again with this. And so the sense from everybody was that event was the naming event, and that the plaques have gone up and so forth. So Carolyn's going to give us some consideration to see if there needs to be something more formal down the road, or a repeat of what was done previously to sort of formalize it, but after the vote. But it's not as if we just didn't do anything. I mean, the plaques are up and so on. So that's sort of where we lie with it. And again, it's a sensitivity to the family and making sure that we're not just, hurting people while we're trying to do something positive, I guess. So I don't know if the board has any thoughts or comments based on that answer, but that's where the music department has landed on it. The other follow-up that I wanted to make was just regarding the transportation costs. So Michelle was incredibly helpful at digging into the history of how we've budgeted for transportation costs and where we are this year. So remember, this question originated a few meetings ago regarding whether there were some cost savings that came with the fact that we haven't had as many postseason events as we normally do. And the reality is that we're still overexpended in that line. And in analyzing it, it just looks like we're not budgeting enough in that line. So there was a point in history where it seems like the AD might have developed a more specific budget relative to the postseason sports. And then in 2017, it went to one lump sum. And ever since we went to the one lump sum model, that's what we have to work with. And if we overspend it, we overspend it. And this year we are overspent on that one lump sum. So the reality is, if a few teams that we predicted would have gone deeper into the postseason had actually done so, then we would be deeper in the hole because we would have spent more on transportation than we have spent. So I think going into next fall, the board should be, really directive with us. Do you want it to be a prediction based sport by sport, or do you like the idea of the lump sum? And if the lump sum is okay, we need to increase that lump sum because it's not that it fell short because of the change in formula. It just is not adequate to actually transport the students to the number of events that are being held. So.
Thank you.
So we'll keep that on the radar come fall as we develop the next thing.
Has there been any more discussion about getting a small van or anything like that to transport the smaller group of kids, or even transport a group of kids to Pinkerton or Alvern during the day instead of a whole bus for that purpose? So
we had that conversation, Liz, but we get ourselves caught up into what the rules actually say, and there's competing definitions of what the rules are. So I know some other districts do it, but the state is telling us that the licensure rules for the individual person driving that are kind of complicated. So we're not exactly sure what the right answer is, but let me put it on our follow-up list because
still up for discussion.
Mike, are we still in the red on athletic transportation with the remote learning? Or are we kind of breaking even because spring sports are still up in the air and we don't know what's
So-
going to happen with that?
So Corey, see if I have this right. If we had played the season out completely, we would have been in the red. But because the spring sports are on hold and more likely than not aren't going to run, we're not going to have any transportation for the spring. So that's going to set us positive again. So we're going to come out okay this year because of that. Is that correct, Corey?
We'd have to release the encumbrance for the athletic transportation. It would leave us in the black. Yep. But if we had spring sports, it would be definitely overspent.
Again, that's if we have a season and if the season even is the same length as it has been in the past.
Right.
And
And,
they may shorten it.
you know,
if you
they're talking about if there's a season, it would be a very short season. So then it may help offset. But a full spring season would have put us definitely in the red. Anything else on transportation? So next up, we've got the 2020-2021 school board calendar. And I think we did not approve that at the last meeting, but we are locked in here to the town offices for the first and third Wednesday for our board meeting. So we have access to this room. The whole calendar is built around that. Interestingly enough, we didn't alter that at all based on holidays that occur. So the way the first and third Wednesdays occur throughout the next year, those are our meeting dates. It's not a conflict with, I'm trying to think, Christmas, for example, so it didn't cause an issue for us. So the calendar's there and we have it posted out. So we're just looking for the board to approve it.
And the only question we had at our last meeting was a concern that it was one in July and one in August.
Yes.
And I think we have enough flexibility that if we find come early August or late July, that we need a second, then we could always add a meeting if need be.
So there's two ways we could do it. We could have a tentative meeting on there that we don't plan a large agenda for, but we all know to hold it and get it onto our calendars, and we can always cancel it. That's one approach. Or the other is leave it as written and just be flexible and ready to call a meeting if there's an emergency reason to do it. So I don't know what the board's pleasure is to get it on there.
I think I think we're flexible enough that if we did need a meeting, we could always add a meeting. Anyone have any other thoughts? Anyone?
Personally, I'm glad that the new GMS principal will be on the first agenda.
That's right, on September 2nd. Yep.
Yeah.
That's a busy week for him.
Yeah, right.
To follow our formula, we probably don't want to add a meeting July 1st, and I don't think we gain anything by a July 1st hold.
No.
We could add an August 5th temporary hold just so that it's there. And if we find that we need it, we can decide to hold an abbreviated meeting and deal with what we need to at that time. And then the 19th is the next meeting. And the 19th is actually, where do we land with teachers? Teachers are coming back on the 24th, right? Or I think new teachers come back on the 24th. So
It was 25th.
So actually, the 19th is kind of equivalent to when we had an emergency meeting last year, right before teachers came back. So really, I guess if we were putting a hold on something, it would be Wednesday, August 5th as a if needed meeting.
I mean, Mike, you could just move the July meeting to later in July to narrow the time between the meetings. Because if we're going to need one, it'll probably be after the August meeting anyways. So if we kept the calendar, move the 15th to the 22nd or 29th to narrow the time between meetings, that would have the same impact.
We may not be able to do that because the Conservation Commission meets on the fourth Wednesday, or the planning board meets on the fourth Wednesday, second and fourth Wednesday, and the zoning board also meets.
Yeah.
Well, then leave it how it is. And I mean, I've only been on for 2 years now, but it's always, we have to add one late in the month, not early.
Another piece too, I wanted to talk with the board a little bit about it, but I'm entertaining the idea, and we need to have a conversation with our support staff. We have a meeting scheduled tomorrow. But looking at possibly doing a good old traditional 2-week shutdown over the summer, you know, so that we just say, look, we're just closing the schools for July 4th and the week after. And everybody is going to take that vacation time to just, I mean, given the year and where we are, I'm wondering if that wouldn't be actually a welcome approach to it, so that we can just kind of take that time and have the vacation for our secretaries, our you know, custodians, and not have people kind of competing and worrying about, you know, how do I schedule all these things throughout the summer as we're trying to get stuff done. So, you know, it may end up presenting more problems than it solves, but I think it could potentially help us, and especially this year where, you know, people will have been out for a while. So the idea of a shutdown is not unheard of, I guess.
Does anyone have any other concerns about the schedule of meetings?
No, I'd like to make a motion to approve the school board meeting schedule.
I'll second.
No further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstain. Tina?
Aye.
Rob?
Aye.
Tara? We lost Tara.
Tara's muted.
Aye.
Liz?
Aye.
Brian? Aye. 500.
Thank you for that. And then just one last point that I want to make just with the board. So we talked about the correspondence that's coming in, which is fabulous. It's great to hear from the public and to have feedback from our constituents. There was a social media thread that came my way just regarding perceived censoring of student opinions on social media. And I think it's important the board and the public know that at no time was a student censored. There was a letter that, you know, contained some accusations that were of staff members. And I have to be honest, I could care less what they write about me. I'm a big guy. I can take it on the shoulders, not a problem. And the same thing with our high school administrators, but our teachers who are, you know, day to day in the classroom doing their jobs. And then for student criticism of some of their actions and activities to be put out there when we don't even know that they're true. There's, you know, another side to every story kind of thing. And I just had written back to the student to say, look, we appreciate hearing your feedback, but you may want to think twice about posting it out on social media because it's may not be the kind thing to do in this environment. And the students took it down on their own. They decided based on that, ask that request for them to reconsider posting it out there, that maybe that wasn't the best forum to put it out there. So it wasn't that the district censored anybody. But, you know, I think people have to be aware that when you put something in writing, you want to make sure that it meets the standard of being true, accurate, and kind. And if it doesn't do those things, then you may want to consider whether that's what you want to do. So that's how that whole kind of event unfolded.
If I can just add to that, I'd like to suggest that we redact the names of those teachers within the body of that email.
What did he say? I can't hear him.
Brian was requesting that the email have the teacher names redacted from it, so that you know, if it's going to be part of the board correspondence, that the teacher names could be redacted out of that.
Do we need to vote on that?
No.
Does anybody object to the idea of redacting?
I guess the only question I'd have, Mike, can the student, if he's under 18, can his name even be in there?
In terms of submitting the correspondence?
Yes.
So we may have to redact that also. We'll make sure that we do all the proper redactions.
Yeah, if we're doing so, we might want to look into that.
Yep, good point.
Anything else on that?
So those are the end of my comments.
That'll bring us to school board. Anyone?
All right, I'll go. This is my chance. Thanks again to parents, teachers, and staff for your monumental shift to online learning. From a 7th grade parent perspective, from what I've seen so far, I believe
When do the
instruction via
students
Google Meet and or
see that? When
creating
do students-
instructional videos is the best practice for online learning. In that regard, I've seen clear growth in that area now, with 3 of the 5 teachers conducting lessons in this manner. I recognize that we have high standards in Litchfield, and I do think we need to appreciate that teachers didn't ask for this. They are adapting as best that they can, given the current circumstances. Many have kids at home themselves with no childcare and perhaps with a working spouse or partner. There are other schools in New Hampshire that are nowhere close to us with remote learning and no live meets or direct instruction at all. I think we can and should still have high expectations in this online environment. And I do expect to see instructional growth as each week progresses and teachers get even more comfortable with the technology. So, for those who have read the online learning plan that Dr. Jetty and the admins put forward, grace is a key word in there. And I think that, that teachers are adapting. Are there some that can certainly step up more? Absolutely. But I think that, we as a community have to understand and recognize and appreciate the situation that they are in, and help support them through this. And I would like to see direct instruction for all the teachers, but is that going to be a reality? Maybe not, but who knows? There may be another way of instructing that comes out of this that ends up working really great, that maybe is not direct instruction. I think we have to give them the opportunity to explore those ways of instructing. I think it's moving in the right direction. I've definitely seen growth, and I look forward to seeing future weeks as we endure this period.
Thank you, Tara. Any other school board comments?
I have nothing to say.
Hearing no others, we'll move on. And this will bring us to community forum. And again, as the community is aware that we are having a school board meeting, unfortunately, with no audience. So our only audience is on YouTube or community TV or via phone. So they're instructed to send any correspondence or questions related to the meeting or any other issues to Tina Harrison. So Tina, have we received any?
Well, I kind of went over it all in the correspondence section. Sorry about that. I should have saved something for now. I realized, though, that I did not read the names of anyone who submitted correspondence. And with the exception of the students, I'd like to do that if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
So for the parents who sent correspondence, and I received another email from Jennifer Byron about the AP courses at Campbell, echoing a lot of the same issues that the other parents submitted. So I have Jennifer Byron, Meg Cavalier, Sherry Thay, Gina Michaud, and Chrissy Schaefer as parents who submitted as the letters. I'm not sure of the ages of the students. We had 2 alumni as well. I'm assuming they would be 18 plus, but I'm not entirely certain. So I'd rather hold back on that.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Thank you. And we haven't received any new emails to you since we've been on?
Just the one from Jennifer Byron that I just received. And actually, Meg Cavalier wanted to remind me going through the points about AP Bio, please don't forget that Mrs. Devine is also an adjunct with SNHU. And so the students taking her AP Bio class are receiving dual enrollment or Running Start credits for that course. So that was it. That's it. As of right now.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
What about the email from Stacy Leary? Should that be included?
Yeah, that was to the board, right? That was an email from teacher Stacy Leary, and she was expressing great concern about burning out. Basically, she was citing her experience as being overwhelmed and overloaded with remote teaching. And I think I do believe that many of our teachers shared in that sentiment too. She was asking to urging the board to reconsider keeping April break intact, just because she felt like she and other educators need that full break. But I know that administration met with actually Mrs. Leary and a number of other teachers since that email was sent out. So, but that was part of the that was submitted as correspondence. Thank you for reminding me, Tara.
Sure.
Thank you. That'll bring us to public minutes, need to be approved for April 1st, 2020.
Ryan, do you want to see if the students have, under community forum, is that the place? I don't know if they have something specific to comment on or if they were just joining us tonight.
Well, no,
Jason,
we're gonna
where's that
swap.
feedback? Is it the TV?
It's probably one of your speakers. Probably.
Sound like mine.
Yeah.
I gotta figure out how to turn the thing off.
I'm not hearing any feedback.
I think we were just here we're here obviously because it's our position, but we wanted to really hear what was going on and be in the full loop, everything like that.
Okay. All right, thank you. Nothing to add as far as from the students?
No, I do not believe we have anything to present tonight.
All right, thank you. So that will bring us to minutes, April 1st, 2020. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Michelle, I didn't see I know you looked at my comments, but I didn't see the changes that you made. Were you able to?
Yeah, they have been revised.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay, so we have a first and a second. Any other conversation? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the minutes from April 1st?
I made a motion to approve the minutes.
So no other discussion? So Tina made a motion and Rob second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain. Tina?
Aye.
Rob?
Aye.
Tara?
Aye.
Liz?
Aye.
And Brian is aye. 500. That will bring us to Mary with curriculum.
All right, let me remember to unmute myself here. Just to give you a little bit of an update on some of the things that we are doing in this remote setting. We've had to put a lot of supports and trying to really work with teachers and staff as we've transitioned very quickly into this remote setting. And I definitely will say from a curriculum lens, people have been working really, really hard. And I want to say that publicly, that we recognize, myself from the curriculum lens, and during our admin team meetings, we talk about it all the time. We recognize the amount of work that teachers and staff are putting into making this work for all of our kids. So I want to start with a thank you. On top of that, I want to make sure that the message is heard that we want teachers focusing on competencies, we want them to, we're in a situation where at this point, that needs to be the focus over some of the minutia, and some of those things we're going to have to let go in terms of the minutia of content, so long as we are really focused on getting the kids the skills and the application that they need to move forward. Some supports that we've put in place. I've been doing weekly check-in meetings, optional check-in meetings on Wednesdays. I've run 3 weeks. Today, Mike joined me and we started doing the joint sessions. It really just gives teachers an opportunity to pop in and if they have questions on procedures or on techniques or anything like that, they're able to jump in and ask and get feedback from either myself or Mike or their peers. It's been pretty successful. We've had anywhere from, I run one at noon, or we run one at noon now, and that has had pretty steadily 15 to 20 participants. And then there's another one at 3 o'clock, which has had anywhere from 5 to about 15. So really, I think the thing that we've had to stay focused on is the communication with staff, but also with admin. We do our weekly directors and admin meetings just to make sure that we're all on the same page with that. And one of the things that I've been trying to do to support staff is, I know Mike's been doing the Sunday night blast of information. I've been trying to do a Friday afternoon one so that staff are getting a little word of encouragement and any updates from me. So just a couple other things that we have going on. NEASC has been running weekly webinars, and they've been really good on, the first one was from VLAX and the Global Learning Academy, which are both established online programs on just instructional methodologies. And we also heard from some schools in China that are 10 weeks in and really focused on the elementary portion here. So I've been attending those weekly and linking up the actual webinar as well as some notes for staff that are of interest. We've revived the professional learning Google Classroom as a place so that I'm not overwhelming staff with a ton of emails with resources. So I've tried to put them all centrally in one location. And just as one, I want to give a bit of a shout out to Elin Pellin, who she and I met a couple weeks ago. She really spearheaded the creation of a social emotional learning and mental health resource center for staff. And she's done the same for families and students. So I'm really looking out for the social emotional health and mental health of our staff and students. So I think that's something really important that we've all had as part of our discussions over the last couple of weeks.
Where are those housed for students, by the way? Are they in the classroom or are they
I am not, Tara, at this point, I'm not 100% sure if the ones for students have been posted yet, but she was creating the Google Classroom.
Oh, okay.
That was going to be accessible for students and for parents.
Oh, okay.
So I that is something that I will follow up with her. I know that she just, the beginning of this week, shared the one with the shared drive with the staff. So I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't sure the order that she was going to get them set up in.
Okay.
Mary,
I see other schools that have it on their website, just FYI.
Okay.
Mary, are we, I was in a meeting this morning and it was brought up about competencies. Are we still sticking with the 3 or 4 summative grades per competency?
We've asked because that is actually not a district decision, that is a building-based decision. So we've asked the high school specifically, because they are the ones reporting out on competencies. We've asked them to take a look at that practice and make sure that it is appropriate for right now. And so that was a conversation that we had last week during our admin team meeting on Thursday. So we will have some follow-up conversation tomorrow.
Having a child who had an issue with not having, I'm going to bring it up every time, he failed the class with a 78 because of a competency. I would hate to see that happen to any kid because there are only 2 competencies in 2 summatives in a competency. But but I'm sure you guys will be watching out for that.
Yep.
As will I, very closely. Thank you.
Anything else, Mary?
That's it for me.
All right. Well, thank you very much. That'll bring us to Corey with the business report.
So I've gone through, of course, this has really been this year is really an anomaly in terms of budgeting and spending and all that. So I went through and I did some financial statements and started to really review some areas where, to anticipate what some spending will be towards the end of the year. I've done them on what's called a modified accrual basis, where I took some things into account, such as, the encumbered contracts for payroll. We're pretty certain that those are going to be paid out through the end of the year. However, there will be some minor adjustments, people who are taking unpaid time. The revenues that we're getting from the town, those are guaranteed. However, we don't have some of the local sources that we get, such as facilities rental and other local amounts. Those might have a bit of a shortfall. So in looking at that, I put these financial statements together to try and get an idea of what our balance will look like at year end and what kind of money that we'll have available to encumber into next year, using a couple assumptions. First being the one that payroll will be paid out. Second being that the encumbrances that we have out there that are blanket purchase order in nature kind of shows a maybe conservative number of 35% of those expenses will be paid through year end, and came up with we'd be looking at a fund balance in the, I believe, 1.5 range. And then I also included a tax rate calculation based on estimated revenues for the year. You'll see that on the last page of the report. I put in an amount of $789,500. That would keep the tax rate stable going next year. So it would give the board flexibility in order to determine what we'd be able to return to the taxpayers while being able to get after some projects. It would leave us about over $500,000 to get after some things encumbering from this year to next. A little later on, we'll talk about some particular areas of projected savings. I included another sheet that will be in the report as we do COVID-19. So based on these things that I've looked at, I've asked department heads and directors to take a look at their budgets for this year to see if there's any things that we would consider a one-time purchase in this year, things that we haven't gotten to yet. I would hate to have things pass by and they're not in the budget for next year and we didn't take care of it this year. So I've asked them to go through and take a look at that. Also to look at the 2021 budget to see if there's any things that are in next year's budget that maybe we can work with vendors and get deferred billing to start. They won't bill us until July 1st, in which case we can get after some things now that are in the FY21 budget while the buildings are closed and we can get in there. And one example is Jason has some server work that's going on, the switch work that's going on that the vendor agreed to defer billing until after July 1st. So it's in next year's budget, and we'll take care of it now while the buildings are shut down. Other than that, that's what I have for tonight, unless anyone has any questions for me.
If I could just emphasize with the board for a second, because we're playing with this philosophical stance of trying to make sure that we deliver a fund balance. I mean, as you know, we've committed to a $200,000 fund balance. That's what we build the budget on, right? But if we were to commit to a higher fund balance of $750,000 roughly, what that would allow us to do is basically keep the tax rate the same next year. So conceptually, that we can say to the taxpayers now that because of this whole COVID shutdown and what we've been able to do, we can leave that money so that when you get your bill in November, there won't be an increase from the school side of it. So it sort of stabilizes that for next year also. And I think it gives us a goodwill gesture of something that we're able to say to the taxpayers, this is what we did while we kept things running remotely. We tightened the belt and did some things internally in order to keep this going. I think it's actually a pretty goodwill gesture. Meanwhile, that means on the project list, there will be things that we won't get done because if we utilize the full amount to get after some of the projects, we could get more accomplished. But I'm just curious if the board has thoughts about that philosophical stance. Is that something we should strive toward, or should we be instead getting after a deeper list, a bigger list of projects, because we know that the list is long?
Well, I'll chime in first.
Mike, whichever way we go, I'd bring it to the budget committee too, just to let them know where we're going. So it's not a blind side.
Well, it wouldn't be a blind side, but I mean, it'll be public knowledge. I mean, the information is there.
Yeah, but just to present it to them before we decide, I think it'd be a good move.
I think as we go along, I think it's just really important to be clear about how much of an anomaly this year is.
Yeah.
If we do return that much money going this year, it's not because, we asked for too much. It's because we had this situation that's just different than anything we've ever seen in the past. So I think we would have, the way we were going, I have a pretty good feeling that we were going to spend down pretty close to that 200, if not beyond it again. And so we just need to be clear in our communications with them. And also and being clear as we do presentations with them that the 3-year historical average is not going to fit into reviewing years going forward with this year included.
Right. I think that's kind of understood, but that discussion will be important to keep having. I like the idea of returning, basically what we didn't use to stabilize the tax impact for next year. I think that is a wise move, and I think that does show some goodwill and some understanding of the situation our taxpayers many of them are in right now, with many of them losing work or being furloughed or laid off. I think that's going to be important for a lot of people if we can kind of reduce that tax impact for next year.
I agree. And I mean, those are my sentiments exactly, that there are a lot of people right now that are struggling. And like Dr. Jetty said, we could turn around and spend all that money and do some of the projects, but I don't think it's the right thing to do right now. There'll be some small ones we can possibly do with some of the surplus, but I think at minimum that we level fund or keep the tax rate level from the school, I think is important at this time.
All right, so Corey, you had prepared another document with potential cost savings from the buildings being, used a lot less and to close down, as well as transportation.
Yeah, that's coming up in a little while, Tara.
And then
Tara,
what?
That's coming up in a little while.
Well, that fits into this. So my question is, those 3 items, the co-curriculars, transportation, and utilities, that represents $350,000 approximately, right? And so you're saying how much is, and so we also budget for $200,000. So are you saying there's another $550,000 somewhere that we're not anticipating spending? I'd like to know where that is. Where?
It's tied up in blanket purchase orders at this point that we're not going to have a real clear picture until I sit down with Ann and really go through Ann and the department heads and directors and go through the existing open purchase order listing to start managing those funds, to figure out what are we going to use, where do you think these are going to land.
So really, in essence, I mean, those were budgeted for this year, correct? Those purchase orders, yes. So in my mind, why wouldn't we still use those? They're still valid expenses. So, I mean, I think 550 seems like the right number, especially looking at that 350,000 that we're going to talk about later. because I do think that those should go back to taxpayers, that transportation that we're not using, the utilities that we're not using, and then the co-curricular. So it seems, pretty close to, so that makes sense now.
And I think, we have to anchor ourselves on the fact that 1/3 of our year is going to end up being remote. And that's a huge chunk
Right.
of time that we're not using resources as we normally do. So, paper, postage actually, it could vary because we may be mailing more stuff now than we normally do. But the point is, when you add up all those little individual pieces, and some of those open purchase orders are for services that we're just not able to use at this point. So it all results in some savings down the road.
Oh, okay. So it's not all furniture or stuff like that. I see what you mean. Okay. So
If I can jump in, I know, like Tara, just from the curriculum side of it, we have, workshops and things that we've signed up for that have been canceled. And so those
I
are
see.
that, whether I'm sending a team or teachers have signed up themselves, that's encumbered money that now, if they're not rescheduled, that will go back into the fund. Same thing with, paying additional time for curriculum work or things of that nature that now is on hold. So I think just in general, there are a lot of little areas and little pockets that this all comes from because things have been put on hold.
Okay, so you're really proposing, Corey, the 550 approximately in purchase orders gets carried over to next year. Is that what you're saying? Yeah. And would it be spent next year on those same buckets of stuff?
Not necessarily. The board can
Right.
approve, as we've done at the end of each school year for the past couple of years, actually before my time too.
Different things.
You approve a listing of projects that we go forward with, and we can get after some things. To put it into, when I prepared these financials on the 10th, $5.6 million was hung up in payroll contracts. $750,000 was all non-payroll related purchase orders that were open at that time. Now, a lot of those are blanket in nature. So say it's, transportation. We budgeted for X amount in transportation. We're only gonna be paying 55% of that bill through the length of the closure. Now, a lot of the things we're doing are going to be pending on what the governor's decision is, which is anticipated to be by the end of this week. So after that point, we can really dig in and see what's going to be available and where we think things are going to land.
So will we get a more detailed view, like the board, of the 550,000 maybe categorized or something like that? It's such a big chunk of, it'd be nice to see like
where those amounts are.
Yeah, exactly.
It's more than half a million.
So what I build my year-to-date expenditure report on with the purchase orders is it's a 57-page report that has every single line and function in it. So what I can do as we go forward, I can sort it in different ways so we can categorize it in different ways.
Okay.
I can do it by object accounts, which will show us what the salaries are, contracted services, supplies, everything. But once the governor makes his determination, we can really dig in and where we think things are going to end up.
Okay, thank you.
And just one more note to that, Tara, because you mentioned something about saving that money and using it next year for the same items. That you can't do that. You can't carry over the money. You can make purchase orders prior to the end of this fiscal year, but you can't carry those monies over in anticipation of purchasing the same item next year.
But remember, on July 1st, there are brand new
Oh, you're
buckets.
saying, okay, go ahead.
Well, on July 1st, there are brand new buckets that open up. So,
Right.
it's not as if we can't get what we need to run next year. We can totally get it out of next year's budget based on what we have.
Right, well, that was my point. If we were gonna use it to next year for the same thing, which we can't, we already have that budgeted. So, but what you're saying is that we can actually use it for something else, which I am not necessarily in favor of. So that's why I would like to.
I had mentioned that earlier in the report as well. I've asked all directors and department heads to go through their budgets and identify the things that we would consider one-time expenditures for this year that aren't in next year's budget that we would carry over as an encumbrance and or order it now and get it taken care of. So it's on me.
It's
so
in there, yeah.
If there was certain furniture that was budgeted for this year and approved, I would say go ahead and make that purchase because it was in this year's budget, may not be in next year's budget, and we don't want to be asking for the same thing multiple times.
Right.
There's other areas such as like supply lines where we're not really, we have money in the budget for next year to restock supply closets at each of the buildings. At this point in time, there's no reason to restock those supply closets.
Right.
There's no one in the building, so we can determine what to do with that money, how we're gonna take care of these things through fund balance. So,
Got it. Okay, thanks.
Anything else, Corey? Thank you, Corey. So next up is our enrollment report.
Yeah, so the enrollment report just is relatively flat. I think we lost 2 students overall in the last month. If you look at it, there's various ups and downs in each school. So, but it was GMS that actually went back 2 students, and they were, I guess, both 4th grade when you look at the analysis. So, one thing to keep in mind for the board, and we've talked at length about with the online learning, our need to keep our enrollment steady throughout this time period. That's just really key for us to make sure that our faculty are engaging with students and our enrollment stays where it needs to be, because it's those numbers that result in our state aid. So it's those numbers and the number of days that we are logging as school attendance that results in the state aid. So it's really important that we keep an eye on these numbers going forward.
Thank you. That brings the 2021 scheduling.
Yeah, so first of all, I just want to introduce, guidance director from the high school, Jody Callanan, has joined us, and Principal Lonergan has also joined us. So they're now in the meeting with us. So anybody in the public should know that we've added them in. We still have our 2 students with us also. But this topic is on the high school schedule. And there's a couple of things that I want to work through with everybody, and then we can take questions on it. So the first link actually goes to the current teaching loads. And I think this is helpful for the board to take a look at. And I want to thank Mary for putting this all together. And basically, when you sort it out, you can see the high school staff member, what classes they are teaching, how many students are enrolled in those, and then it summarizes to the total student load that they have. So it's an important number to keep in mind, that how many students a high school teacher sees on a daily basis for instruction. And then you can see the actual course loads so that you can weigh those and understand exactly where the numbers fall at the high school. The second page of that spreadsheet, or the second sheet of that sheet, is a color-coded department listing, so that you can see, again, by teacher, how many students they have, how many classes they teach, and then what their average class size is, which is simply their total load divided by the number of classes that they're teaching, so that we can calculate an average. And we index that off to two index points, right? So one is the current policy that the school board has at the high school. And that policy talks about striving to have classes of 25. And so if we take that policy cap of 25, which actually in practice, the classes are capped at 24 as a rule, and then that cap is overridden if it's necessary to override it. So if you need to put more students in, you go over that cap. But the program is set to stop putting students into a class automatically at 24, with some exceptions, and the exceptions are all listed there. So You can see like in the foods classes, the exception is 20. You can see in the woodshop class, I think it's set at 16, et cetera. So all those exceptions are provided for the board. So that column just shows if you take that cap that's in the policy or in practice and you say, well, what percent of the tank is filled, if you would. So think of it as a gas tank. Like I can fill it all the way up with 24 students, but if on average I'm putting 18.2 students in, you can see there's a percentage that is then generated. So you can get a sense of how full we are at the high school. So that's the one column there provided for the board. And you can see that when you look at it against your policy and the caps, that there aren't too many people I don't think there's anybody at 100%. And I think there are a few people, a few teachers that are even in the 90s. So I can't pull the sheet up in front of me live because I'm driving the screen. So I'm doing this from memory, but I think you can see the numbers that are in that column. The second column uses a study that came out called Breaking Ranks 2. And Breaking Ranks 2 was all about high school reform. And basically, there was a section there about really personalizing instruction. And the thing that the board should note is that Breaking Ranks 2 came out in 2004, right about the time Campbell was opening. And there's no doubt in my mind that some of the design features embedded into Campbell's structure were based upon what was emerging out of the Principals Association with Breaking Ranks, because it was all kind of coming out at the same time period. And in there, they indicate that you should design a high school schedule so that no one teacher interacts with more than 90 students at a time. So 90 is sort of the capacity threshold to make sure that you're able to personalize a child's individual instruction. And if you exceed 90, then you are putting yourself into a situation where the ability to interact and to personalize is hampered. So that second column takes the Breaking Ranks number of 90 and the total number of students that a teacher is seeing. And it says, where are we on capacity there? And the ones that are marked in red are the ones that exceed 100%. And so you can see that there are, using the Breaking Ranks number, some teachers are exceeding the 90 that emerges out of Breaking Ranks. Sorry?
Quite a few
10?
of them. It's about a third of all teachers.
So let's talk about that for a second, because so again, the Breaking Ranks number, schools that implement a different type of block schedule. In other words, if you do a 4x4 block schedule, you stay under that number automatically, because you would be teaching 3 classes and, 330s would hit 90, and we're not going to have a teacher at Campbell High School with 3 classes of 30. So, part of in choosing to go with an alternating AB block, that does drive the number a little bit higher automatically. The other thing to point out is if you take those 10 teachers and look at the number of them who are teaching a 6th block, right? So in other words, contractually, we're paying them a 10% salary increase to take on an additional class. By and large, they're the ones who are then exceeding the 90. So that's another choice that is being made in terms of the way we schedule students. And an argument could be made that scheduling the 6th block is actually a detriment to the personalization piece, because when we choose to have teachers take on that additional load, it creates an additional stress and an additional pressure in terms of the number of students that they're seeing. So, there's always a push-pull decisions that are made, but I think it's noteworthy that many of the teachers who are over, in fact, it's because of having that 6th block. So
Just to clarify, because I know you can't see it, Mike, we have 10 teachers that are over the 100% in the Breaking Ranks column, and 5 of them are teaching 6 blocks.
excellent.
Yep.
Thank you. So that's what that sheet is intended to show. And this was sort of the snapshot of where we are. And this is hot data. So it was pulled just the other day. This isn't beginning of the year as the schedule is being shuffled out. This is the reality of where we are right at the end of 3rd term and what the numbers look like at the high school. So I don't know if anybody has questions, or if you'd rather I just talk about the scheduling summary sheet that's the next link, and then take questions at the end. So I don't know if there's a specific question.
I just had a quick question about sixth block.
Yep.
Is that generally, is that offered to teachers as an option and, they can kind of choose? Or is it more enrollment and placement driven? And then we say, okay, you're going to teach a sixth block. How does that work?
So I'm going to answer, and then Bill and Jody can correct me if I'm off, but there's basically it's strategically done when necessary. So it's not an automatic default, and it's not a teacher saying, I want to teach a sixth block. It's literally, okay, so I think the pool is about $45,000 that we budget for 6 blocks. And you can picture that each one is about it's a $4,000 to $7,000 adventure for depending on where the teacher is on the salary grade. So then you have to figure out how to parse those out to get the best bang for the buck. So the bottom line is we spend the money. We are spending the money that's budgeted in order to do that, but we're trying to run the classes that get the highest number of students enrolled. Jody, did I answer that correctly or?
Yes, you did. If you take Spanish, for example, this year, where we went from 2.5 teachers, we lost Ray Tardif in her position. What ended up happening was Heather Davis picked up a 6th class, and Liz Perez picked up a 6th class in place of having Ray Tardif teach.
Are those classes standalone classes, or do they end up being combined with another class?
These are standalone classes.
They are, okay. All right.
But we have had teachers have 6 blocks where they've combined 2 classes together and taught them.
That is true.
I think Sean McDonough has done that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but more often than not, they are standalone.
They are more often than
Yes.
not.
Yep.
Okay.
Anything else on the 6 block notion? Because that's an important, you'll see in a second, that's an important part of trying to figure out how to keep the high school scheduled and keep students in classes.
And then so I might be getting ahead of myself, but there are some classes that are taught the whole year. Is that just some AP classes, or that, where they would end up getting 2 6-class blocks if they taught that class?
So,
can you explain that?
Well, there's 2 ways to look at it, Tara. So a teacher could have, so think of it this way, they teach 5 classes. And then they have 2 planning blocks, and they have a study hall or something. So those end up being the 8 blocks that a teacher is available during the day. So most teachers are teaching 5. And if they, instead of a supervisory, if they take on another teaching assignment, that's the 6th block. Okay. The other model is that if one of those 5 ends up being a doubled up class, so you're really teaching 2 different courses within the 5, that counts as a 6th block also. So,
6 as well.
the bang for the buck is to have it as a standalone 6th class, because that's more things for students to be able to take. So it just opens that up, but it's different ways of implementing the 6th block.
And there are some classes that are simply semester-long courses. So, for example, I'm not sure if it's Paula Barry. Is it Paula Barry next year where we're looking at scheduling her for 1 6 block for half of the year? Or was that Denise?
It's Denise Freeman. Mm-hmm.
Denise. So 1 half of the year she would have a 6 block, that 6 class. And the second half of the year she wouldn't have a 6 block.
Correct.
So it would only be for half of the year.
How do you determine which classes are year-long versus semester? Is there some kind of guideline? Core classes? No?
No, it's what was given to us and handed down through the years more than anything.
It usually comes from most of the classes are year-long classes. Most of the classes are year-long classes, and most of the more specific classes, a lot of your UAs, a lot of your really targeted Vietnam, some of our more targeted elective classes tend to be semester-long classes. But your core math, science, social studies in ELA for at least freshman, sophomore, and junior tend to be year-long classes. Senior year, when you get into electives, it does become a little bit more divided.
So the teachers that are above the breaking, I want to say Breaking Bad, but it's
Breaking
not.
ranks.
Numbers. How much over the threshold are those 10 teachers that exceed it? I'm trying to.
Well,
So is that the percentage number in that? Do you want those percentages to be at?
you want them to be under 100%, right?
Under 100, okay.
You know, Diane Angelini has 91 students,
Yeah.
and you know the rule is 90. You know, is one student a make or break? I don't know. You have to decide. So that's probably 101% on the sheet.
Yeah.
And you know, again, is that really over in a grand sense? Who knows? You know, and part of it you have to look at her load.
And the types of courses.
And the types of courses. That's right. I mean, there's a calculus an AP Calculus BC class with 7 students in it. So that's going to provide a really high level of personalization. But again,
So I understand it. So we want the numbers in that column G to be under 100%.
you know what, Mary, I'm just looking at if you look at Diane Angelini, for example, because it's one of the ones that's over at 91. But did we double add the AP Calc students? In other words, those are 23 unique students that shouldn't count twice toward the 90, right? So because it's a year-long one.
It's a daily.
That's true. It counts towards her average because that is the average number of students per class, but it shouldn't count towards the unique students.
So it's
If we're
actually
looking at the number of unique students.
Right.
Same thing. No, I guess she's the only one that's teaching a daily AP this year, I believe.
So actually, she's seeing 68 students, which is well under the 90. It's just that 23 of them are year long.
Daily.
Yeah. So you know, so even there, that's a quick fix to the
All right.
data, and it actually
Yeah.
And those numbers run from the ones that exceed the breaking ranks threshold. You know, that runs from 101 up to what's the highest? Around 120%.
121.
Who's the highest?
21.
121. Again, when you look at the higher ones, 118 is a 6th class, 113 is a 6th class, 121 is a 6th class, 120 and 111. Those are all people who have six blocks.
Right.
So the ones that are over 100 and at 5 blocks range from 100% to 109.
Okay.
Is Sean McDonough in the same boat? He has, maybe it's different classes, but he has AP Programming 2 and then 3. Are those the same kids from first semester to second? They're different?
Those are year-long classes.
Those are, each of them are, okay.
One of them is a year-long class.
Okay.
And what you're seeing in this list, Tara, is just semester 2 classes for this year.
Oh, I see. Okay. All right. Sorry to interrupt.
No, it takes a while to wrap your head into. It's very different than at the earlier grades where how many first graders are there? You divide them by 4 classes or whatever. It's a totally different way of looking at it, right? So if we shift then to the other document, and I want to walk the board just through that. So basically a reminder that we do have a class size policy. It's been in place for a number of years. The only adjustment that was made was to the kindergarten numbers once we realized what we have programmatically. So we did make an adjustment there. There's an equity question that's been raised just in general about the expectation that our teachers at various levels have for class sizes. And I think the board does a really good job of keeping an eye on those class sizes at the younger grades. So the grid shows you the actual average class sizes that we have, kindergarten through 8th grade. And you can see that it's a low of, I think, 18 students, up to a high of 20, almost 24 students in 5th grade. So, those are the numbers that are traveling in a cohort with our youngest learners. And again, you see some high school numbers that are at or above that, but few. Largely, the numbers are less than that. And so there is that equity question that's been raised internally in terms of our teachers across the system. And, our responsibility to make sure that we are keeping the program running, but at the same time being aware of the numbers across the board. So I think that's an important grounding for the board to just keep in mind.
Is it possible to share this so that people at home can look at the same numbers that we're looking at? I know you can't, Mike, but I didn't know if somebody else could.
I can certainly share it after this, or Michelle, I don't know if you're able to make these links on the public agenda, because there's nothing private about these numbers. These are just straight raw numbers that are out of there. So Michelle, I'm sure can work on.
Might be able to add it to the meeting materials that I have posted out there. I could just add it into that particular grouping.
Perfect.
I'm getting emailed questions about the documents, so that's why I was wondering if.
Yep.
Okay, if you give me a minute or two, I could do that, but go ahead and discuss what you have to discuss.
Okay. Thanks, Michelle.
You're welcome.
So the next thing is that, and basically, there was a public comment earlier about the amount of time it took to create the master schedule. The first time that we were really wrestling with the impact of the numbers was early March. And I think it was March 4th was the meeting that we sat down to say, okay, what do we have? So students make their requests, but then it has to go through the whole collection and assignment and getting into a presentation format for us to consider. So it was March 4th that the team first started to take a look at it. And then, as we know, about a week later, everything went haywire on us. So that definitely has been a little bit of a monkey wrench in terms of the way we're running school currently. But based on that, I think it's really important that the board recognize that there were 26 electives that the team decided not to run because of low enrollment. So there were 96 students who had requested those 26 electives. And I've talked with Principal Lonergan just about, and it's not a new theme. This is something that has sort of been plaguing the high school for a while. And that is that they've developed this fabulous, rich, elective program of studies that is a mile wide. And there are so many options and so many opportunities for students that they are then uniquely kind of picking, like, I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do this. And you end up with these 26 electives that are not able to be run because the students are just spread out too thin. And I think going forward, as painful as it may be, I think the high school has to decide, are there courses here that we just need to call and say we're not going to run again? Are there courses here that we have to put into some sort of a rotation to say we're going to purposely publish and stick to a schedule of when we're going to offer them? Because, the current thing is that we've got a bunch of teenagers walking into the Chinese buffet going, look at all this food. They're choosing all over the place. And now at the end, you can't make any sense out of it because everybody's just running around and there's a bunch of leftovers on the plate at the end of the night, right? So I think we've really got to decide. And as Campbell goes from a high school of 550 students to a high school of 375 students, and you have fewer students to even enter into the mix, the likelihood that you're not going to be able to keep that level of a rich program, it's just the reality of it. And we've got to look for alternative ways to enhance that format for our students. So I wanted the board to see the number of, it's not just as much as the comments are about AP Bio, and I get it. There's reasons why the comments are about AP Bio, but there are in fact a greater number of courses that we're not running. And
Mike, that's actually 27 courses, because I was just looking through that listing. We have AP Programming 2 on there, but we also had AP Programming 3 on there, which we cut. Am I correct, Jody?
Yes.
And that was 4 students. and that's not on that list. So it's technically 27 electives and 100 combined requests.
Yeah, I think speaking as a parent, I've had my student, you know, she's picked several electives over the past, well, she's only a sophomore, so 2 years going into her third, and hasn't gotten them because of low enrollment. So I like the idea of setting everything on a set rotation, certain, you know, within each department. And I think we definitely need to do something like that moving forward, as hard as that will be. But what do we do for the students right now? Like, I share the concerns of the AP Bio kids and the kids who are not getting their AP courses that they selected, that they were kind of relying on, because specifically AP Bio hasn't run in 2 years. So how do we meet the needs of those kids and then set up moving forward to have a more set, you know, a more, a smaller plate?
Structured, yeah.
Yeah.
So let me, we're going to get to that one in just a second, Tina,
Okay.
if you bear with me for a minute. So people have heard, so there's a misunderstanding, I think, about the decision rule. So I had entered into the high school team. I said, look, we've got to have a rule. We've got to have some trigger point because, you know, in some cases we were saying we're going to offer AP, we want to offer AP Bio with 8 students, but we're not going to offer AP Environmental Science with 8. Well, why? What's the difference? What was it that drives that rule? Or why is 8 students in some other class, like, gosh, I can't remember one off the top of my head. Wooden construction had 6, or intermediate woodworking had 7. Why are they not running if we're doing this 8? There really didn't seem to be a guiding rule for us on making those decisions. So, you know, we had looked at, I proposed the idea of a decision rule about a class of fewer than 15 not running, unless it represented a capstone or sort of a pinnacle course, in which case you then have to take those on a case-by-case basis. And so we were trying to come up with a way to have some rule to guide us going forward. And you have to keep in mind, too, that when you're looking at requests and singletons, right? So a singleton is a class that, you know, go back to the model of there's 8 things that, eight chunks of time that we can schedule. And when you put something into only one of those and create a singleton, you know, that then runs up against a bunch of other stuff that hits there. And for a bunch of students, they may not be able to get that singleton class. So singletons in general run sometimes a 50% actual scheduling reality, because when it's offered there, you pigeonhole when it can be. And so a singleton that runs against VOC, which is another singleton, and then you're forcing a student to choose. So you're constantly trying to move singletons around to try to make this work out. So just keep in mind that 8 requests doesn't always equal 8 students in the seat come the start of school, because other conflicts end up occurring, right? And Jody, what's been your experience at Campbell with singletons? What percent do you think you hit? 50%, 75%?
I would definitely say you're probably around the 75% mark of singletons. It's probably one of the most difficult buildings I've ever scheduled. Give me back Nashua High School any day when I have 15 sections of everything to offer. It's so much easier to create that schedule. But into that too, and you just said something, Mike, that made me also kind of blink a little bit too, but even if the class fits into a student's master schedule, guarantee the amount of kids that we have that change schedules is out of control. And again, I think you mentioned it's the Chinese food buffet, but I always say it's not McDonald's. You just can't come in and order whatever you want, but the kids will come in, you know, they have that first 5 days, but I'll even hear it over the summer all the time too. And I just decided I don't like that class anymore. What else is open? And so just because I walk in in June and have 15 kids in the Vietnam War, the first day of class, I may only have 7. Because 8 kids may have decided to change their minds. So even though the numbers may look super healthy on the first day of school, by day 2, they can really look very different.
Which reflects back to the other spreadsheet. When you're looking at where we are right now, part of that is students have just changed their mind. And there's always a tension point. There's not a high school that doesn't have the tension point of, we want students to get what they need now. We want them to be engaged and motivated to take the class. But we also made staffing decisions based on the requests that he made. So those weren't just, oh, I think I'd like to try this out. Those were kind of commitments to take the class. So it's, the old college thing. Remember when you wanted to change your schedule and you couldn't because the class was full. You didn't just go to something, right? But anyway, it's a good point, Jody. And the larger a high school, the easier it is because you have fewer singletons and you have a lot of options for students versus we're more limited. So anyway, so that was just a decision rule in terms of a guidance point for us to have a conversation around staffing, because we know those, ultimately that equates to dollars. It equates to the way we're taking the taxpayer dollars and then implementing a program in order to do the best we can for all students. It's a balancing act. So then there's two classes in particular that I just wanted to talk about. So the AP, I'm sorry, before
Michelle, were you able to post these links?
Yes, I posted the link right underneath the other packet of meeting materials. If they go into the website where the agendas are, under the school board where the agendas are, it'll be the document below the agenda materials.
All right, thank you. Just want to make
You're
sure
welcome.
for people who have it.
So the two classes we looked at, the AP Spanish. So here's a pickle that we're in, right? So we have, as you saw, there are two teachers teaching 6 blocks this year. They have both experienced a difficult year with the course load. Carrying 6 classes is something that the individuals have said, I don't want to do that again. That's overwhelming. It's a lot on my plate. So the AP Spanish, on top of that overwhelming thing, creates another problem because our Spanish 4 class has 13 students requesting it, and the AP Spanish has 6 students requesting it. And so we've engaged in dialogue about, do we combine that into one class of 19 students, advanced Spanish? Students can take a couple of years. It becomes a conversational, it's a different curriculum. It's not, I'm teaching 4 and now I'm teaching 5. It's I'm teaching the 4s and 5s together, and I'm trying to build a deeper knowledge and utility of the language so that we can then prepare for the AP. But that's a training factor for our staff. And, Mary and I were talking earlier about summer professional development opportunities that probably don't exist this summer because of the COVID shutdown. So, this is creating a whole tension point for us going forward. And you can also see that the number of students who have taken the AP Spanish has historically been around 5, around 4. So the 6 is actually more than what we've seen in the past relative to the Spanish. But that's one area that we are really trying to figure out the best way to go forward and the best way to use the resources to help our students, recognizing that at this point, we're down to one language. We're a Spanish instructional program, and that's our model. And we have 89 students who I believe take the Spanish 3 class or have asked for Spanish 3 next year. Why the drop off from 89 to 13? Well, colleges want 3 years of a language. So students are taking it through the 3rd level. And then there are far fewer that are carrying on at that point. But I think we have to really engage in that department with what is our vision? How do we want to best prepare our students? What are the tools that we can use? And how do we make sure our teachers are trained on how to do it? So that's a unique scenario. The other is the science courses. So AP Biology had 8 requests, AP Chemistry had 12, and AP Environmental Science had 8. The chemistry is a brand new offering, so this is the first time that it's been offered. And you can see that there hasn't been so I'm not sure about the pattern because biology was offered in 2015, not offered in 16, not offered in 17. So there were 2 years that biology didn't run. Then it was offered in 18 and offered in 19, not offered in 20.
Mike, that's environmental, not biology.
Oh my gosh, I'm on the wrong chart. My apology. Let me reverse that. So that was environmental, not offered this year though, correct?
No, it is offered this year.
Yes.
It is offered this year.
Okay.
We're not planning on offering it next year.
But you could, but I
Because of this current year?
AP Environmental is currently running.
Yes.
Oh, environmental. Okay, I'm sorry.
yeah,
I'm
no,
on the
that,
I'm on the wrong chart too, Mike. All right.
it is in front of me. I should read it. But at any rate, so it is running in 20. But again, just from a pattern point of view, there wasn't a real clear pattern. It would have been offered 3 years, and then it was offered, or would have been offered next year, except again, with 8 students, the capacity was not there in the department. So chemistry is then offered as a brand new opportunity, and 12 students took it. And then biology, which had not been offered in 15, but was offered in 16, 17, 18, 19, but not in 20. So this year it was taken off with the idea that it would run again next year. But again, there were only 8 students who requested that. And, you know, we then offered to the students who were not able to schedule it a variety of options. So you can see those printed in front of you. But one was the bio students could take the AP chemistry, which would be a senior advanced science course. And frankly, if you're going to be a biology major, you're going to have to take a chemistry course in college anyway. So, you know, that is, it's not as if we're saying, oh, go take AP literature. You know, it's in fact a rigorous advanced science class that would be available to them. The other was to take AP Bio for free on VLAX. The third option was to take biology at Nashua Community College, and the district had offered to pay the $500 tuition. We actually have an agreement with the college that we could use to help offset that. To take other AP courses offered at CHS. So, you know, a student could take a math course or some other class that would help them in a collegiate science environment. 2 other options for the board to think about. One is that it could be running the class by shifting teaching assignments. So basically, there are not currently 2 science teachers scheduled to take 6 blocks, but we could add 2, reshuffle schedules, and it would cost about $15,000 to do that. But then you would have 2 science teachers teaching 6 blocks. Another option would be to go back on the cut that we had made relative to the part-time science position, and to hire a part-time science teacher, if we could find them, to come in at a 33% teaching assignment, and knowing that, you know, most likely that would be a retired teacher, top scale. And so we're estimating that to be about a $25,000 cost in order to bring the person in. And that would allow 2 classes to be taught. We're not saying which 2, but the point is you could then reshuffle within the schedule and could in fact offer the AP Bio by committing to that $25,000 expenditure. And then the last point to make is that there's then a second chart here of classes that we're running with low enrollment. Just to speak to those for a second, we need somewhere to put students as the schedule shuffles out all the way through the first week of September. We need to make sure that there's some flexibility and places for those students to go. So these are classes that tend to be kind of go-tos for the counselors to offer to a student in order to help fill schedules up. But there were a couple of other cuts in there with the short story class, a graphic design class, a social entrepreneurship class, and a mystery class. So those were additional cuts that were also held. I'm not sure they're on the other chart. And then the last point that I just want the board to think about is the budget committee this year. So the budget committee initially they cut $297,000 out of our salary line. And then later they restored $38,000 to that line. So we have an effective cut of $259,000 from our salary line by the budget committee. And that's part of the reason why we've taken a reduction in force with a social studies teacher and an English teacher and a 30% science teacher. And remember, the school budget that was recommended by the school board differed than from the budget committee's budget by $146,000. So we are dealing with a budget reduction in terms of staffing, and going back to the numbers that we saw at the elementary level and the middle school level, I don't think we can absorb it there. In fact, we're really closely watching our kindergarten numbers and our first grade numbers. So it seemed as if the high school was the place to take those reductions. So I've walked you through all the documents, all the background, given you some of the thinking. I just want to give Jody or Bill a chance to say anything before we take questions. So I don't know if I missed anything in all of that is really important for the board to hear.
I think you've got it dead on. I think the scheduling piece, we ran environmental this year, AP environmental, and we're clearly not going to run it next year. And the idea was, and Mike, we had talked about this previously, was trying to get on an alternating schedule. So bio had run consistently all along, but the reason we didn't run it this year is because we were planning on running it next year, where the teacher who was teaching that class, this would be a separate year for her to teach the bio instead of as she is teaching the environmental this year. So while we haven't had a consistent process on that, that's the direction we were heading in with that. The last point you made in terms of having options for students, that's really been a challenge at times. And Jody can attest to this, finding places to put students. So even though we may have a course right now that shows 12 students in it, there's a strong likelihood that becomes a direction that we move kids towards when they say, I don't want to take this course and I need some other option. So Jody, you can speak to that a little bit, but it becomes somewhat frustrating later on to put those pieces of the puzzle together.
I know my son had 2 classes not run, so he still has to make a decision what 2 classes to fill his schedule with.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not an easy decision as a senior, so.
No.
Yeah, I don't know how you guys do it.
It's the biggest puzzle ever. It's kind of very complicated, so it definitely, there's so many avenues to it, but just a really prime example of needing a place for kids. We have something like 35 students who are not going to be able to get into Foods and Nutrition 1, who have put that into their requests, but I just don't have enough. Lynn Nagy doesn't have enough hands and space to put students. So I have 35 kids. I'm going to have to find other classes to put them in. That's just one class.
So when we look at the idea that we've got to sort of pay careful attention to those electives in terms of keeping them, we also have to pay careful attention in terms of cutting them. And that's the predicament for the conference. I will say that Andrea Stern does a remarkable job in the various iterations that she runs. And she's really patient and flexible and creative in doing that. And we have a lot of time ahead of us to do it, but it makes it easier. We just spoke with her a couple of days ago. And the conversation was she had done about 40 hours of scheduling already, Jody?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this is just running a first iteration without knowing some of these other electives that we're talking about, whether they're going to be in there or not. Mm-hmm. So it's complex, it's tedious, and the sooner we make these clear decisions, the better it'll be for the kids, most importantly of all, but for managing to get the schedule in.
So happy to take questions from the board. I mean, you guys know I'm a high school science teacher. Of course I want to run AP Bio, but I'm also now a superintendent who's looking at tight numbers in a system and saying, what's the fair, equitable way to use our resources to meet all students and all needs? And boy, is it a tension point. It's not easy stuff. So I'd love the board to tell us how you'd like us to proceed on it.
So, Mike, I guess my first thing is I think people have to understand, I don't think this is an isolated situation. I mean, the numbers are going down. If nothing changes right now, another 40 students over the next, 4 or 5 years at Campbell? Mm-hmm. I believe it's 40 or 45 students. So we'll have to make tough decisions. I have 2 questions. One, have we reached out to Londonderry and Alvern again to see if they could absorb the biology kids during the school day?
Biology is not an option, unfortunately, because of the tight lab space, Rob. So they can't take the kids in for AP Biology, but Alvern definitely is willing to work with us for AP Spanish. And now we're down to only 4 students who want AP Spanish. So that makes it a little easier.
I guess my second question, and I don't want to open a can of worms, if chemistry is a new class, AP chemistry, and we've skipped 2 years of biology, could we push are there enough juniors in AP chemistry that we could push into AP biology this year and then start AP chemistry next year?
What is that number, Jody? That number is 12, right? Correct.
I'm just wondering, Bill, if where this hasn't run for 2 years, would it make sense switching it to run it next year and push chemistry off till the following year?
It hasn't run for 1 year. It's just this year that it hasn't run.
No, 2.
Well, it'll be, yeah.
2.
Okay.
Jody, want to be this year and next year will be the 2 years?
No, the last year AP biology ran was 2017, 2018.
No,
it was.
no, it ran 18-19. It ran last year.
Well, that's what I thought. Yeah.
But I guess my question would be, with the 2 years, is it possible to push chemistry off for a year and then the kids know the rotation? They have biology this year and chemistry.
Oh, that's thinking outside the box. I like that.
Yeah.
I missed it, Liz. What?
No.
I have a thought on that, and it's this. We just trained Joanne last year, this past summer, and my thought is if you take that and put an extra year here in that sort of time between the training and the time she actually gets a chance to teach the class, I'm hesitant to do that because knowing as I was a former AP teacher, how valuable the training was, but getting in that first year and getting your feet wet and making the mistakes and having the successes, it's a really important thing to do. So I hesitate on that, Rob.
So my main concern is, well, I have a few main concerns. But I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like the expectation was that we didn't run AP Bio this last year, with this current year, but we will be running it next year. And so I think a lot of students hung their hat on that expectation.
No, that's actually, no. When we do the scheduling with students, we tell them that we may or may not be able to run these classes. So they know right up from the get-go that we're not going to be able to run every class. And so that's why we ask them to choose very carefully and think through that process. We meet with the juniors individually to talk about course selection one-on-one. And so those are conversations we have with those students one-on-one. And we always let them know, if you are very passionate about this, find your friends who are also passionate about this as well, because if we don't have enough students, we're not going to be able to run this class. So the kids are told up front that there are things that are just not going to be able to run.
I think my other concern is that as we have declining enrollment, I mean, our core classes are always going to run. You know, the required sophomore English and social studies, those are always going to run. Art classes are, you know, they're going to be full. But as you climb up the ladder and you get to those more rigorous, more advanced classes, almost by necessity, those classes are going to have lower enrollment. And I really appreciate that we have so many options for kids. But at the same time, I don't feel comfortable with cutting those academic opportunities for our kids in the name of budget cuts. Even though I recognize that it's a reality and it's something that we need to look for. I would prefer to, you know, absolutely moving ahead, offer fewer classes. You know, three of the classes that were on that kind of the class of singletons that we were cut, 3 of them, my daughter, you know, requested. And if only one of those English classes or only one of those computer science classes was offered, then I think we would have seen higher enrollment and then those classes would run. So I think
Jody, can I ask one other clarifying question? If the more AP classes we run, regardless of the subject, does that then bump up the college prep regular level class numbers because the teacher's teaching an AP?
Mm-hmm.
So if we run AP chemistry and AP bio, by default, the college prep course numbers are going to rise quite a bit, correct? College prep science, I should say.
Correct.
Okay.
Where are the environmental AP science kids going if we're cutting that class?
They've, most of those kids have dispersed. It's run pretty regularly over the last few years. So those kids have mostly dispersed into other AP Chem areas, or some haven't decided yet either, Liz. So I have some of that too.
So Mike, just to ask, or Bill, having taught it, I'm a social studies teacher, so we don't even have a test. So you guys have taught it. I know I bring this up infrequently, but schools with trimesters do it in 2 trimesters. Is there any possible way we could be creative and do chemistry and biology each in a semester with maybe an addition, or is that totally impossible?
Well, my understanding of the AP Chemistry is it is a really, really rigorous program. To do that in one semester, I can't imagine that. And
because you have 90, I know you'd have 120 days in trimesters. And you only have 90 days in the semester.
And it's a lab-based course, and lab-based courses are very different from any other course where you don't have that, you need that lab time. So that's another component of that, which is why I think the science teachers have wanted them to be a double block class to both have a sort of lecture and research and that, but also the time for pretty intensive, significant lab experiences.
When you say a double block, they have 2 blocks all year for AP?
Correct. Yep.
Oh, see that okay. Now I got to back up and say, how's that work when tons of districts do it in 2 trimesters out of 3?
Or in just every other
Yep.
day, just a daily course.
I thought you were talking this, when we said double blocks, for some reason I thought you were talking it was 180 days
Nope.
of AP. So in effect, they're getting 360 days.
Correct.
They should be getting 4 across the boards then. I mean, that's a ridiculous amount of time.
They do well.
I mean, Bill, I would be questioning if they don't do well with that much time.
Yeah,
they're up against kids who are getting 120 days of this, and they're getting 360. Oh my gosh. Okay. My vote would be cut that right now and offer both classes.
Yep.
I mean, it would be my vote. I mean, I'm sorry I didn't understand that, but
it's technically 180 days. Because
Yeah, it's every day.
Because, right, it's technically 180 days. Okay.
Double block.
Well, yeah. No, but you have to, it's the way it's set up. It's an everyday class. So it's say it's AE, would that be correct, Jody? An AE class.
Yeah.
So it would be Tuesday and Thursday, block A would meet, and Wednesday and Friday, block E would meet. So it's 180 days, okay, over our schedule.
But every other course is 90.
Right.
Year-long course is 90 days.
And it's 180 days
Basic
of
math classes, 180 days?
Say that again?
Some of the basic math classes are in 180 days, aren't they? They meet
Yeah.
every day?
No.
No, not anymore?
No.
Okay.
But it is 180 days of a 90-minute instructional period. So,
Right.
so
Right.
keep in mind that when you implement a 90-minute instructional period, you cover a year's worth of content in a half a year, every other day. But these are, in fact, so I see what Rob's argument is of the 360, because if you go back to a traditional 45-minute instructional period of 180 days, this is really doubling that. So you could think of it in a 360 model.
Yep.
Jody,
The exams are in May, Rob, so it wouldn't be 180 days. Aren't the AP exams in May?
But Liz, think about a trimester-based school.
Yeah.
Exams are in May, and the kids only have it second and third trimester. That means they've only got 75 days before they take the exam. I mean, this baffles me when I'm showing my ignorance, I guess, but it just that's a lot of time.
Yep, no question.
Sorry, I got to.
have we out to the AP environmental kids and asked if they would enroll in bio, in AP bio, just to kind of see if those numbers are there to run.
That actually, Kate Devine has been speaking with some of those students directly. And she definitely feels that some of those students would be successful and ready for AP biology, and some of them are happily waiting to hear if they can change over to AP biology. So those numbers could go up by a few kids.
Okay.
And some of the AP environmental kids want AP environmental, and I explained that we did used to be on an alternating year pattern school. Maybe, I don't even know how many years ago. I think it was right before Bill came on, maybe Lori Rothhouse's last year, and Brian Bork may remember when this changed up a bit. And that was, we had some discussion about, it was mostly about performing arts and their desire to have everything running, or to have offer up everything every year because of scheduling discussions back at that time. So Kate's been involved with those with the kids, and she definitely has some kids from AP Environmental that would be happy and willing to go to AP Bio and AP Chem.
I have a question. When the kids choose their schedules, do they make A and B choices, or just, one set of choices and then, okay.
And then,
But then the challenge with that is that if like 50% of their kids are getting their first choices, then they're stuck into the classes that the rest have. Yeah, I don't know. I just feel like they're not.
They get to choose alternates as well.
They do.
Yes.
Okay.
So what we do is we have them choose 7 credits of courses that they would like, and then we have them choose at least 3 alternate courses in case something doesn't run. So in many kids situations, just because something's not running, I already have other options within their schedule to choose from, but not all students follow those directions. So that's when I get to be in a jam, because I definitely have a handful of kids who didn't put enough alternates.
So nobody chose AP Biology as an alternate?
One student did. There were 8 requests and there was one alternate. It's not the kind of class that if I can't get something else, I'll just take AP Bio. It's, yeah.
Okay.
Right.
All right.
Woodworking.
So I think a couple of things that we've talked about going forward, I think we have to be really clear and transparent about what the patterns are. If we're going to offer courses on an alternating basis, you have to keep in mind with science, you have a certification question, because somebody certified to teach bio is not certified to teach chemistry. Somebody certified to teach bio could be certified to teach environmental, if that's their interest area too. There are some biologists who like the environmental side, and there are some who avoid the environmental side. So, it gets into a certification question and an interest question, because you want somebody who's passionate about the subject also. So some of these things are just really dependent on the personnel that we have.
A couple other questions. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Mary.
Well, I have just one more thing. Mike, you mentioned earlier about Spanish, and it just brought that back to me. One of our Spanish teachers was willing to take on a 6th block. Okay. So just so I don't know that we necessarily have to hire a 1/3 of a Spanish teacher. I think depending on what the decision is with AP Spanish, the challenge there was the teacher did not feel comfortable with the idea of teaching AP and Spanish 3 within the same class. My conversation with her was she really felt that the AP is so prescriptive and so demanding, and trying to manage that with the traditional Spanish class might be a little bit, Spanish 4, might be too challenging. That was one of the concerns.
Well, that is not a double.
Say that again?
That's not a daily
No.
class.
No, it's not. No, that's correct. Yep.
I had a couple other questions related to the letters that we received and just what is factual information. How do grades and credit show up on the report cards from VLAX or community college? Do they get grades for those?
Those grades are put onto the transcript. So if a student finishes a VLAX course or takes a community college class, they send their transcript into our office, and then that is they're noted in the student's transcript. So you would see VLAX, environmental science, and you'll see the grade, and then we give them the credit that VLAX has given them for that. So that does appear on there. It's just not calculated into their GPA.
But that's one of the things we're looking at doing in the student handbook is taking the VLAX and taking the college courses and include them in the GPA for the students, because if they're approved accredited programs, it just makes sense. The same thing with CTE courses. And is that the other one, Jody? We were talking about the CTE courses too.
Correct.
Yeah.
And Tara, I think that you're asking the question that 66 days of remote learning are going to really have us examine. So what are we trying to do? You know, because this is shifting the normal. And I'm not, trust me, it's convincing me more and more why bricks and mortar schools have a really important role going forward. I don't think we could ever achieve a complete virtual experience. But I still think that it's going to force us to think a little bit differently about the learning experiences that students have and how they build their resume, how they build their transcript going forward. So
can I add to that? I have a child who's taking a VLAX class, and he currently has a 91 in the math class, and it's not going to count towards his GPA. And he's working just as hard as that as he is in his remote learning at Campbell High School. And it's kind of a bummer that he can't get that averaged into his GPA because he's really doing well with the VLAX.
yeah, I think we're going to examine. So what is that role? And again, should a student take all their classes at VLAX and get a Campbell High diploma? No, that's not our diploma. That's a VLAX diploma. But is there some hybrid combo here that makes sense? I think the high school has to engage in what is it that makes sense, and you know, recognizing where students are, because you're right, those classes are rigorous, and you know, we have to find a better median on this. And if all this remote learning brings that about, that's, again, we're a stronger system because of it.
So and that was our plan with the student handbook this year, was to change that. And I'm glad to hear you folks saying that you're supportive of the idea.
Yeah.
Particularly when they're from accredited programs. It's one thing if it's a school that's not accredited and you don't know what it's about. That should not be wading into the GPA. But when we talk about VLAX as an accredited high school, CTE programs at Pinkerton and Alvin, they're accredited schools. It just makes sense that grade that they've earned should weigh into their Campbell High School GPA.
Agreed.
I see nodding heads, so that's a good sign.
Yeah.
Mike, the only
Always
thing,
a year late for me. Always a year late.
Mike, the thing after this, the only thing I would be hesitant to do for this AP biology is that with the numbers going the way they are right now, I just don't. If we have options, I'd like to figure it out without putting more payroll in, because I think the numbers look like they're doable with what we've got. So that'd be my only concern. You know, hearing 25,000 for a part-time teacher, hearing 15,000 for 6 blocks. I prefer our first step is to figure out how to do it with what's there.
That is doing it with what's there, is by adding a 6th block. That's what I am.
But looking at the numbers, I don't know.
I've engaged in conversation with a few parents. You know, if you're if your interest is biology and you want to pursue some sort of biology in college, the AP chemistry, which might not be, you might like biology a little bit better, but the chemistry is not going to be a wasted amount of time. And it will certainly send a signal to a college that you're taking a rigorous chemistry or a rigorous science class. And therefore you have the chops to succeed at the college level in it. So again, it might not be what your heart says you want to do, but it's not going to set you back. That's for sure.
Yeah, I'm on the flip side of the coin. You know, I know that we have to tighten our budget and we have to, especially in salaries and benefits, that we need to, you know, look at what we're offering to students before they select it, I think. And I think that's a real conversation that we have to have, and we need to have a plan going forward. But for AP biology specifically, and for the, you know, for those higher level courses, I don't want to make a cut for our, you know, in our AP courses as opposed to a cut somewhere else.
Well, the problem is, Tina, you're cutting a class with 8 or you're adding a class with 8 and you're potentially knocking college prep, which is the majority of our kids, up to another 4 or 5, 6 kids per class. You know, every reaction has a reaction with this also.
Newton's third law.
I'd ask Mary's advice on this, but it seems we're tying up an awful lot of teaching hours for these AP courses with 2 blocks. And that's just my personal opinion, but you're tying up a lot of time. And if these are our best and brightest students, in my opinion, they have to take the bull by the horns and prove they can do it. And why are they're getting double the amount of time of a college prep student?
Rob, in all honesty, and it's not the popular opinion, but I agree with you. You know, when I was at Timberlane, we were in a block 90 minutes every other day. All of our AP classes were 90 minutes every other day. And our kids had to take the exam at the end.
Yeah. And Tina, I agree with you. I'd love to keep these classes, but if you're time for 8, 10, 12 students, you're tying up a teacher for 2 blocks, limiting the number of classes you can teach because they're teaching it for 2 blocks. That's where we should be looking first, to me.
Mary, I didn't realize that the 2 blocks wasn't, you know, everywhere.
No, it's not necessary. I wouldn't even say it's common practice. It's ideal practice. Any AP teacher would tell you that it would be ideal to be able to have every class, every day. The kids would be prepared inside and out for that exam. But I think the other issue, and Bill and I have talked about this a little bit, is we have, you know, there's also an equity issue. We have AP classes that run every other day.
Calculus runs every day, doesn't it, Mary?
So the students can teach
Calculus runs every day, doesn't it?
Question, but
Yes. AB does, BC does not. Correct. Those are the 3 classes that run every other day. I mean, that run every day are the chem, does environmental?
No.
No, that's every other. So it's chem, bio, and calc AB run every other day. But the rest of our AP classes, I mean, those run every day. The rest of them run every other day.
So,
oh my goodness, that's confusing.
Yeah.
Tell me about it.
That's what happens with the teachers. I mean, yes, it's not ideal, but when we have class sizes, when we're looking at class sizes of 8, we can do a class size of 8 that runs every other day, without sacrificing the rest of our science students. Isn't that worth looking at as an alternative to not running the class at all?
What does Kim Devine say? Will she be able to teach the material?
She doesn't feel comfortable, from my conversations with her, that she could teach it in a single block, a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or a Monday, Tuesday, Thursday.
Because that was our discussion at the beginning of this year when we were looking at running AP Bio and AP Chem, was that running both of those or tying up both of those teachers for 2 blocks for one course was just going to be unmanageable.
Yeah.
Right, and that's why we went to AP Environmental would run this year. We would not run it next year in anticipation of AP Bio running next year. And the other challenge for me is that 7 of those students for AP Bio are seniors. Okay, so to me, that's sort of the bugaboo in all of this is that that they're going to miss that opportunity. You know, Mike says, you know, AP Chemistry would be certainly an appropriate class. I will say the students, part of the appeal of the class is Kate Devine as a teacher who is really rigorous, really demanding, totally professional, and even though she's had her challenges in the past, kids come out of there later on and come back from school and the remarks about her are really, really, really positive.
Yeah, and we've gotten emails. I mean, some of those alumni emails that we received said exactly that, some of them said it was the most valuable course they had their senior year.
I think it has to go back to that whole chemistry thing then, Bill. If it's not equitable, if we're going to keep the number of hours, then maybe we have to look at having chemistry pushed back a year and going with biology.
I see that, but at the same time, I 100% agree with Bill. Is that we have a first time AP teacher who has put a lot of time and effort into training for this, and to make them sit a year is tough. Kate's been teaching AP Bio for quite some time, so she knows the ins and outs of it. That's my concern is pushing it off a year with a newly trained teacher.
Yeah.
I still struggle having one teacher with 8 or 12 kids for a double block. I mean, that's killing me. You're putting the college prep kids who probably hate, a lot of them don't want to be in science because they're doing other things. But the college prep kids are 20, 24 to a class with one teacher every other day. And we're taking the kids that probably can handle the extended workload, and we're giving 8 of them a teacher for a full year. That's almost like against everything. I'm sure, Mary, everything you hear in trainings,
Yeah.
I mean, it's against everything I'm taught. That's to me, that's my big shock moment of this whole meeting is hearing that.
How many schools run it every day? Do we even know? Because I know Merrimack doesn't run it every day.
Well, I know we do, Liz, but I also know we're on trimesters, so it's every day for 120 days.
Right.
Yeah, most schools I know, if they're on trimesters, they run it every day. If they are on AB blocks, they run it every other for the majority. Not all.
I don't know. Now I'm looking at it as I know it's not ideal. I know Kate doesn't feel comfortable doing it, but is running it for a single block an alternative to not running it at all?
So I guess the other question, is this even our decision, or is this for Mike to decide and come back and tell us?
Oh, it's for the high school team to continue wrestling with this. I mean, I hope you're understanding how complicated all of this is, right? So if nothing else, and that we have to, we have to make a resource allocation. I mean, ultimately, that's what this comes down to: is how are we going to deploy our teachers? And I think as I'm listening to this, to be honest, the AB schedule is new to me. So that's a piece that I'm like, how are other schools on an AB schedule implementing the AP courses? And again, we're not even consistent between our APs. I mean, go back to an equity issue. I'm sure our history people would love to have the students every day, but we're not providing that. And so somewhere along the lines, and keep in mind, the students who are taking AP chemistry have already taken a year of chemistry. It's not, this is the first time at AP Chem. They've got a year of chemistry, college level chemistry under their belt. And now they're taking this course for a second go round every day. It's an intense resource allocation that we just have to really figure out. How do we be the best academic institution we can?
Is the second block generally labs, Mike? Or Mary? Is that what it is? So it's one instruction, one lab?
Well, so again, when you're on the block schedule and you have the extended time period, like every day is a lab day. So it just gives you the flexibility. Now there are, I think in the AP curriculum, there are standard labs that you're required to do as part of the prep. So you have to do a certain number of labs. In a traditional schedule, you sometimes have, you have to wait for that lab day to come around, right? So here you've got every day is a lab day. So you can fit them in as you need to.
AP Chem would be run that's a double block as well, right? As well as the environmental.
Yep.
Yeah. I had one more question. Do AP classes taken elsewhere count toward a diploma with distinction? Is it GPA that determines the diploma with distinction or something else?
There's a few factors that do. The students have to take a combination of 15 honors and AP classes over the 4 years. And I'm the one that has to count that every year. I count them by semesters, and that's how I developed that program way back when. So our kids never have a hard time hitting that. That's never an issue. The other factor is they have to have a 3.92 GPA or higher. Yeah,
And so-
and this year we were slated to have a lot of seniors this year. I want to say it was something like 17 kids were going to hit diploma with distinction.
Wow. So
Mhm.
AP classes taken elsewhere do or do not count toward that?
I count them, absolutely.
You do count them. Okay.
It doesn't matter where they take them. If they take an AP, that's
Got
counted,
it.
absolutely. Yep.
Okay. Got it.
One of the things, I was just thinking back to my experiences at Pinkerton, and I know with our AP science classes, we had a 8-period day, 5 days a week. They would have their science class in, say, Block C, and then they would have an additional lab that they would take that was twice a week added on to. So it wasn't quite the full load that we have, but it was essentially almost 1.5 the load for the teachers in terms of their time with students. So it was a injected with some steroids that they were provided some of that opportunity to have kids scheduled to do the lab work as well. Additionally,
I'm going to suggest to the board that to going forward, I'd like us to do some homework with our peer cohort, and especially the other small schools. So the Hopkinton, Sunapee, Moulton Burrows, how are they scheduling these APs? Because they have to be in the same boat as us with the numbers. And, so what do they have for AP offerings? How do they schedule them? How many students are taking them and so forth. So we can pull some data from the peer cohort to help guide us going forward. But that's not going to help us with the current scenario, which is, we've built a schedule and made personnel choices based on the personnel that we have. And so absent, the board kind of authorizing us to hire somebody, I'm not sure where else we could go now, because even, in order to add AP Bio back in, we're going to need to shift personnel or have additional personnel to make that work. And then the other thing I would just say to the board is, remember, there's a list of 27 classes and parents and students behind those. So, what's your next trigger point on the requests that come along? Because there are other things that we chose not to do.
And I'm going to throw just another, my own commentary, and something that I think we have to think about too is this is impacting a CF. So if we're talking about assigning a 6th block to a CF, who I know she's teaching 6 right now, but I also know that has been, that's been a lot.
Yeah.
So I think we do have to keep that in mind when we're looking at the personnel as well.
If magic happened and we decided to cut something down to 1 block, does that solve the issue?
I didn't hear you, Tina. What
No.
If magic happened and everybody was willing and able
I came
to,
prepared.
can you still hear me?
Yep.
Okay. And we were able to cut AP science down to 1 block like it is for all the other AP subject areas. Does that solve the issue? Would we then be able to run 2 a year instead of 1 a year without overburdening the lower level courses?
We would still need a 6 block even if it ran 1 every other day.
So it will cost $7,500 instead of $15,000?
it would cost $9,400 maybe.
It would, what about if we made that change, it would include chemistry. So that would actually cut a block from Joanna Ray.
Right.
I know certification, that's where we get into certification issues,
Right.
but
What do you mean? How so?
Because
she's our teacher, she's the certified chemistry teacher, so.
Right.
Well, if that cut a block, does that add back in possibly AP environmental?
No, I wouldn't. We weren't planning on running AP Environmental this year. I mean, that, in some ways, I wish it wasn't on the listing of kids to select the course. You know, it was one of those that I was thinking we ran it this year. Next year would be an off year.
Yeah, that was at the request of the CF.
Right. Right. And
Can you tell the public what a CF is?
curriculum facilitators,
There you go. Sorry.
like a department head.
Yeah, that's what we call them.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
I mean, I hate to talk out of both sides of my mouth, but I'd like to see biology run, but I'd also prefer not to see anything added to the payroll.
So if we went down to having AP biology and AP chemistry run every other day, I'm looking at my spreadsheet right now, that would just keep need only one science teacher with a 6 block.
how?
Because,
We're already paying for it, right?
which is already what, correct. Correct. We had one teacher with a 6 block, any science teacher with a 6 block anyway. So even by shifting those, it would just still be only one science teacher with a 6 block. So if I just run it like this, it would be Kate would have, just use this. Kate would have a 6 block. Raheem, Keys, Ray, those positions are full-time, right on the money. And then Pothier would stay at the 50%. So there's only one science teacher with a 6 block if they both went to every other day.
Yeah.
So here's the other question, Jody. I'm looking at that scheduling sheet that we had in terms of 6 blocks initially.
Mhm.
Initially, we had the 2 world language teachers, and then we pulled one of them because we weren't looking at combining AP and Spanish 4. Okay, so that would be one. Then we would have had 2 science teachers, well, actually 3 science teachers,
it's a challenge.
which would be the biological sciences,
The reality
for-
is those
for Kate,
teachers may refuse.
the,
They could say,
um,
I can't do the
and the
quality.
forensics being added to Raheem, and Joanna having her AP Chem. Then the other one was an art teacher for 1 semester only, correct?
Let me email this to you.
Okay. I'm just trying to think of, like, if we're talking a $45,000 budget for 6 blocks and staying under that, I think we could do that possibly without a whole lot of adjustments.
So take a look at this one I'm going to send you.
So
I mean, I think the other question in seeing if they can do it in one block is how much would it affect what they're learning? You know, are they going to be prepared for the test? It sounds like other districts are able to do that. I mean, I think we do need to dig deeper into that.
So I think that poses a question, and that's why I was asking Mike that, because I asked earlier if it could be done that way, just do it in a single block. So part of that's gonna be up to the teacher, whether or not they're comfortable teaching it that way. So that would have to be asked of the teacher. You know, and I think there's like several things here that we're discussing. I think biology is a little different than some of the other courses that were taken off, because correct me if I'm wrong, Jody, but every year you have a list of classes you drop, correct?
Oh, absolutely. Yep.
Right. It's like this every single year. But bio's a little different because somehow we skipped it, and what we're trying to do is get it back on the every other. So that's part of the issue. But the other thing is that the budget committee cut $200,000 out of salaries and benefits. So we gave orders that we need to cut salaries and benefits. So it's a matter of that, but it's all, you have to start looking at class sizes, and that's where we looked at. So biology kind of like falls, I think, a little differently than most of these other ones because it is one that we want to get on track as far as the every other year. And as far as monies, again, the budget committee is the one who cut our monies. And this year is a little different because a third of the year, we're not going to be in school. So to be honest with you, money's not the problem, because we can turn around and say, listen, we want to hire a part-time teacher paying $26,000, and we're going to give direction to the superintendent to spend $26,000 from the surplus of this year on items for next year, and it's not going to cost you a dime next year. We're going to spend it now. So it's kind of like a trifold issue we have here, and it's so the other classes, like Dr. Jetty was saying, we don't want to start like all of a sudden, okay, we bring back biology. Now what's the next course that's going to come back? But if you look at the other ones that aren't being offered, it's because of such low enrollment. I mean, some of these, you get 2 AP courses, one that has 1 student registered and one that has 4.
Right.
And
but I think moving forward, we do have to look at, are we, like Dr., are we getting the most bang for our buck? If we can teach 2 AP classes with 16 kids in each one every year by kind of downsizing them to fit within one block, that's a much more effective use of our resources than.
Absolutely. So it comes to the question is whether or not the teacher is comfortable teaching it that way, or what, are you going to get the same out of that teacher through that course by cutting it down in half?
Well,
I don't know that
totally
answer.
understand
So.
that, but if the other option is not running the course, I
Right.
think we have to consider both sides of the coin.
Yeah, I had said to Brian on the side, my concern is that somebody says, I really don't want to do that because I don't feel that I can achieve. I mean, I'm accustomed to having students achieving at a high caliber on the AP test.
Right.
And if you cut me to half the time, I don't feel I can do it justice. So actually the choice might be not running it is better than running it in a half-hearted manner.
I think I make your argument though, Mike, it's not half the time. They've got double the time already. I mean, that's the concern I keep going back to.
And maybe that's their decision. Now that we're up against, yes, we didn't want to do it with a single block, but maybe now the decision is you run it with a single block or you don't run it. Maybe that decision is made differently with that information. And I think it is. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I think it isn't.
Go ahead. Stop.
Sorry. I think it is an equitable issue. Why are some teachers given twice the time to cover their AP work and others don't get that? And I'm surprised that it's actually happening, because I would think that the teachers get the half the time would be, they would like to have twice as much time. So.
Agree.
I guess I'll resist that a little bit. I think with lab classes that's different, and I know we talked about calculus, and that's probably a little bit different one. But for me, for the lab classes, I just think that time setting up, taking down, preparing, all of that in that environment is it requires additional time. Does it require a full class period of time? Maybe not, but I know in my prior school it required more time, lab time, that the kids were scheduled for with those teachers. Sorry.
I'm talking and I'm miming again. Has that idea been revisited with the teachers, or was that more of a beginning of this current school year discussion?
I missed the first part of that, Tina.
Has the single block idea been revisited since getting all the feedback from students and parents and everything else?
I spoke with Kate about that, and she was fairly adamant that just would not be possible to do in that class.
All right.
And Joanne is the first time through, so I haven't spoken with her about it because it wasn't a concern at the time.
So we've been having this discussion for a while, and happy to carry it on. But I think, there's some ideas that we can go back to discuss with the teachers, because we can't really make those tonight. I think pulling some data from other schools makes sense. I think thinking about Rob's comment with, the double block and 8 students, and, here we are getting, some pushback from the community when we lowered our kindergarten number to 18 5-year-olds. And we think that that's an adequate number, right? And then we're talking about 8 advanced students all year long as a double block. It's like, these are the equity things. This is not easy stuff, not easy at all, but you can understand why we're struggling and working our way through it.
I fall back on the same side of the coin. I say, because like Brian pointed out, we have the funds because of this anomaly and because it hasn't run for 2 years, and these seniors will not have a chance to take it. It wasn't offered as they were juniors. I think we run it. That's kind of where I'm falling.
But run it with existing resources, or are you going to make a motion to direct us to, hire a teacher or something? I just want to be clear on it, Tina.
I think if they're willing to take on a 6th block and that isn't too much, I think that's my preference.
Mike, where do we stand on salaries and budgets? I guess that's the piece I don't feel like I have a handle on.
So again, I get a little frustrated because the budget committee cut this directly from salaries and benefits, but then they do the waffle to say, but it's a bottom line budget, so you can choose to cut something else. And then we're being criticized when we cut it out of salaries and benefits by some folks saying, well, you should have cut it out of athletics. But the budget committee didn't cut it out of athletics. They cut it out of salaries and benefits. So, everybody wants somebody else to be the bad guy in this. And that's just very frustrating to me because we're trying our best here to figure out how to proceed ahead. So here's the answer, Tara. I think Brian's spot on right. We can figure it out. If you tell us you want to run the class and you want to pay the teachers a 6th block and you want to keep it as a double, we'll find a way to make that happen. If you tell us you want to run it as half the time, we have to go back to the teachers and see if we can make that work. So it's really the will of the board on what you want to do. So I want to make you the bad people now. No, I'm kidding.
We're already bad people, Mike.
You tell us what you want to do, and we will find a way to make it work.
Down. Just keep kicking.
And so is this the only class that obviously it has gotten the most, feedback from students and parents. Is this the only class that we have this concern with? I just don't want it to snowball into something else,
I think the thing that makes this.
Jody, how about you?
I have in a couple for the AP Environmental, but it ran this year. And the people that were a little concerned are parents with freshmen and sophomores. So it will be offered again in the opposite year. And I think that's on Bill and I to talk with the CFs and to make sure they start understanding that based on enrollments that we need to start going to an alternating year pattern again, like we did 5 years ago with our schedule. It's a necessity. And so if we set that tone now and they understand, okay, we're going every other year, then, I'm hoping we're not in this position again.
Right. So it's every other year, but do we have 4 science courses? AP science courses? Do we have AP physics?
No.
Okay. So we have 3 science courses that we are saying we'll run every other year. So
yeah, you've got to figure, would be AP Environmental should run with one of the current dailies. So AP Environmental should run with AP Chemistry on alternating years or to that extent.
I think our preference is to see if we can teach them in one block. And then we have more options with scheduling. We get more kids in classes they want to take. If they really don't want to do that, then I think we run AP Bio next year as a 6th block.
I think you've given us direction and work to try to figure out. And it's really going to come down to the conversations with the teachers. So we'll engage in that.
That's just I'm not making a motion here, but that's where That's what I'm feeling. I want our kids to have the experience, but I realize that we can't continue doing it the way we're doing it now.
Mhm.
So everybody else can weigh in now. Go.
I do feel bad that AP Bio hasn't run this year, and it would be 2 years that they are missing it. I also feel like, you know, for me, the eight AP environment kids aren't really having their voices heard, because I feel like, you know, if our threshold is 10 for an AP class, we're only talking 2 kids. And so we have that one alternate, and then maybe there's somebody else in AP environment that would want to shift over. It's not really that many. I think mostly because we didn't run it this year.
So just keep in mind, though, that Mike was alluding to this earlier, just because we have 8 students on that sign-up sheet doesn't mean when we build the schedule that 8 students are going to be in that class. We might only be able to fit 6. Now, Jody and the other counselors do remarkable work in fitting kids in as much as they can into these classes to make sure that they run. Okay, but if we have to do that with 2 AP courses next year, I think that's going to be a little bit challenging, given they're both science classes.
So these are people who have selected the course, but it may not fit into their schedule. I did not realize that.
Yeah, and various iterations of the schedule. Andrea and Jody and I are meeting next week to talk a little bit about this. And unfortunately, we won't be able to give her some clear direction, maybe by Tuesday of next week. But to get those various iterations, it requires a whole lot of twisting and turning and rebuilding and rebuilding and rebuilding. So, yeah. I mean, even the first time she ran it, what'd she say, Jody? She had a 92% fill rate.
Yeah, she did, but there's definitely some kids that are not, didn't have a full requests because of classes that I've removed in their schedules.
Yeah, right. So they're in the tricky part, and we have to get the AP courses figured out. So, and we have time to do that, though.
Not much, because she's also trying to build Power School at the same time. So her time is going to be pulled in lots of different directions as well. But I think conversations with those 2 science teachers first tomorrow, Bill?
Yep.
Rob, do you have any insight or input?
No, sorry.
And I'll send an email out to the principals list just to get a sense from them how they teach their AP classes.
I just sent it out. I just sent a request out to the regional CIA group as well.
CIA? What?
Oh, yeah, you didn't know that? I'm a director at the CIA.
So Jody, it's interesting what you just said. So there's still a possibility that, let's say we able to arrange this, that some of these of the 8 may not be able to take it anyway.
That's correct.
Yeah.
I pretty much sell my soul to get students into AP classes. And I guess the other one that I tend to hear a lot about if there's a conflict is concert band. That's the other one, because you've spent a lot of money on instruments and stuff. So those are usually given a very high priority.
Yep.
But Brian, when you have a singleton in there, it still creates that challenge. So you can sell your soul as much as you want. There are some students you just can't make it work. So,
So I think at this point, unless there's something else to add, is have Dr. Jetty check our cohorts as far as how they're going about it. Jody and Bill can talk to the science teachers and see if they're comfortable doing it in one block, and then revisit this unless someone has something else to add.
I wondered if the students had anything to add, or were either of you in this boat with the signing up for AP courses that weren't, that were chosen not to run next year?
So Trevor, Chloe?
So I was not, just because I'm a senior and.
Oh, right. I'm so sorry. My goodness. Of course you're collecting points.
It's fine, but and I just heard, I've heard it go around a lot, and both want each class a lot, and it's extremely hard to fill both sides' needs, and this is a very difficult topic to like.
Yeah, I agree. I've heard like the same thing because I have friends that want to take AP Bio so bad because they're going into nursing and they're like, I really need to take this class because of the labs and everything like that. And so I think if we do end up being able to get another option, like going to another school so they can get the lab work, then it's okay if we don't have it at our school. But if we go online, it becomes difficult for them to get the labs and stuff.
Okay. Yeah, I appreciate the amount of work and research that's gone into this and finding alternatives for the kids that we just can't meet their needs at Campbell. I'm more and more appreciative of our extended learning opportunities and our partnership with other schools and community colleges so that we can meet the kids' needs as CHS population declines.
There is a grant at the state level that does allow students to take a couple of STEM classes in their junior and senior year at the community colleges without a cost to the students. However, I don't really talk about that a lot just because I don't know where the funding is for anything, just like you guys at this point. So I don't like to promote something that I just don't know that's going to be there in the next school year. But in the past 2 years, the governor has had a grant where we've been able to have a couple of kids go over and take a science class for free.
Okay. All right.
All right. Well, thank you very much for all your input.
All right. Good night,
All
everyone.
right, thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Ray.
Take care.
All right. Shall we move on?
I think so.
Okay.
So that brings us to old business. So this is our COVID-19 update, and we've added a few things in here. So just a quick thing. So as board members, you got a copy of the remote learning plan. You know the amount of time that went into editing that and getting the language precise and so forth. And so that has gone out now. Our staff have it. Our parents have it. It's interesting. In the last parent survey that was sent out, we were asking specifically about, okay, sorry. These are strange things in a meeting. I'm just seeing the cat walk in front of Corey there. So it caught my distraction. But anyway, so sorry. So the
Remote learning.
totally lost where I was with remote learning.
It's been sent out.
Yeah. So don't apologize, Corey. I just got a chuckle out of it. My dog drives me nuts at home. These are all the things of working from home that we have to wrestle with these days. So anyway, the plan is out there. The parent surveys, a lot of people commented in the surveys, or several comments were made relative to the time expectations that we had. And so I was hoping that they took the survey before they read the remote learning plan, because the remote learning plan at least made it pretty clear what we were expecting. And then feedback that we're getting from parents are running along the following themes. People really want to see an increase in the amount of direct instruction that's being provided. So that's a common theme that we're hearing from parents and families. The survey results seem to suggest, again, that students and parents are looking for more direct instruction from the staff. And we're going to be talking about that as an administrative team tomorrow. So I'm glad that we're doing those frequent check-ins with our families to get the feedback from them. The other piece is there still is some confusion around WILD. So the Wednesday Independent Learning Day, the way it's being rolled out is still causing some confusion for families and for students. And in fact, I had a high school student who emailed me directly to say, this is what I got today. Is this the intent of it? And I put Bill Lonergan in the loop on it, because I can't actually see who the students' teachers are. So it's hard for me to go in and take a look at what the exact work was. So just know that when those concerns come our way, we are responsive to those. So I don't know if the board has heard anything else on remote learning or things that you want to bring up relative to the plan and the communication on it. So the next,
Did you see, excuse me, Dr. Jetty, did you get to see all the surveys? Are they done or closed or?
I closed them out this afternoon. So I told people we were going to close them on Tuesday, but I kept them open until today. So we have the survey results, but I haven't picked in too deep. I've glanced over the comments and looked at the general trends there. So from a workload point of view, so basically, once again, parents and teachers are kind of aligned with 3/4 of the people saying the workload is about right. And then 1/4 of the people saying it was overwhelming. Students are at 50-50. Probably, I mean, I don't know if our student reps would disagree, but, you know, I know if my boss asked me, so is it too much work? Absolutely. Got to lighten this up a little bit, you know, so students are suggesting that it's a little bit on the heavy side. But that's not where parents or staff are falling on it.
Can you share the link to the survey with us again, like you did last time?
I think you have it. I think it's in your folder, Tara, but if it's not there, I'll double check at the end of the meeting to make sure that it's in the folder. I think if you go into
on the drive,
if you go to the school board drive,
okay,
that's where it resides. So you should be able to, you should have access to look at those results there.
Okay, I'll search around for it. Thank you.
And it's just called Parent Survey 2 as the second survey that we administered under remote. So the cost savings sheet, and I'm going to ask Corey Corey, will you walk us through how you came up with these projected cost savings relative to the COVID shutdown?
Make sure I'm off mute here. All right. So the first category, we had a conversation with First Student, their general manager, and the people who work in our depot here in Nashua. Within our contract with them, there was specific wording regarding epidemics and shortened school year, which would give us a reduced rate of 55% of the contracted daily rate. So what I did in that first section that I calculated the 66 days times those rates and put those in. The co-curricular broken out by school. I took what was in there under the blanket purchase order for those categories, added that back into the budget and came up with those amounts. So a potential transportation savings of $161,000. There's also a couple other things we're looking at. There's a couple of vendors that we have for special ed transportation that do work with us on a daily basis. I need to reach out to one in particular because they're still billing us full amount. There's no written contract that I know of with them that holds to it, but they've saved us quite a bit in terms of when Durham Transportation and Easter Seals can't help us. This one, Caring Hands, which is out of New Boston, tends to be the one that picks up for us where First Student can't do the routes. So I'm gonna reach out to them tomorrow. My cat will not leave me alone, and make sure that we potentially take care of them a little bit. Maybe a reduced rate. Talk to them about a reduced rate while this closure takes place. Down on the left is the sport coaching. There's been discussion about coach who have started work already. A lot of preparation work for the season that's now not going to take place, but we looked at paying them 1/3. So I went through and did a calculation of the 1/3 plus the FICA retirement for those that were eligible for New Hampshire retirement. So that's potential savings of another $25,000.
Corey, can I just ask? That was just varsity coaches, right? Not middle school JV.
Middle school, they didn't start anything at this point.
But that's what I mean. With the 1/3 payment, just the varsity coach.
Yep.
It's varsity. No, it's varsity and
JV.
JV.
High school level.
Varsity and JV.
Yeah. So
the only coach that hadn't started JV level up at the high school was JV lacrosse.
Right.
At this point. The last section being utilities, so water, propane, oil, electricity, and I kind of went based on the buildings operating at 25%. I think the 25% is probably conservative. We're probably going to see savings above that, but we'll have a better idea once the monthly statements start coming in and get an idea of what our monthly bills are going to look like while the buildings are down to that level. In total, the summary down at the bottom right just summarizes the total of those three categories with a potential savings of $343,000. Or that we were talking about earlier under the BA's report, there are other areas where we could see, but these were the three big areas that stuck out to me. So I started to work through to see what we could potentially be saving.
Corey, when you were talking about Caring Hands, is that number included in the special ed transportation or not included? I missed that.
This is just all I have in here is the first student contracted rate. We have two routes that are specifically by them.
Okay.
I need to follow up with Devin and Lori tomorrow to figure out specifically what routes that Caring Hands is doing, and then reach out to the vendor themselves.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any questions on these calculations or what we're trying to keep track of it all in one spot so that we can share this with, obviously we want the public to know that we're paying attention to savings that we hope to discover out of this.
It's a good format, Corey. I think it's easy to follow. Thank you.
So two other quick items that are there for you. So the food service link is there. Keep in mind that the food service program continues to run. And Lauren's giving you numbers of how many meals she's serving and how many students are being served. And she's also evolving that program. So the question came up today about, social distancing as people pick up the meals. And if you haven't been through the line, I mean, Lauren is from about 10 feet away having people shout who they're there to get meals for to her. She checks them off the list and yells down the line to Carrie Litchfield, who then runs over and puts it on a table further down the sidewalk where the families pull up and pick up the meals themselves. So, we're not even reaching into the car at this point because we're really keeping that distance all the way through. So we're following all the proper food prep rules, social distancing for pickup, and you can see the numbers for yourselves in terms of our families are taking advantage of it. And then,
Hey, Mike.
Yep. Just one quick reminder too, that this may not, we're going to go over in this area because we're continuing to serve food, keep the food service, which is a self-funded, it should be a cost neutral piece, but this may be an area where savings in other areas help to map it out because this will probably run in the red. So Rob.
I was just going to ask, I saw on the news say a couple other districts have sent out reminders with everybody being furloughed and with all the struggles going on. Is it something we could put out there, or should we put out there, that if a parent does need help, contact and talk to Lauren or talk to you?
Yeah, we put that into every single parent newsletter going home.
Okay. I just wanted to make
Lauren has it in there. We heard from, I think it was the Conval district that said they had processed 75 applications for free and reduced in, was that a week, Corey? I think it was a week. But that's an unusually high number, completely tied to the number of people out of work and furloughed. So, and let's just say it again here. If there's anybody who's struggling, they should contact Lauren. The paperwork is relatively easy to fill out. We can help you fill it out. And if you qualify, then you're set. You're in on it. So, Corey.
And it's confidential.
And it's confidential. Yep.
Do you know how many applications we've received so far in this time? Any idea?
I don't know that number.
We've had families reach out to us that have kids in the Litchfield School District, but also have children at St. Francis. And Lauren's been providing meals to the children that are at St. Francis as well. And they are eligible for reimbursement through the government as well as we serve them. So we do have families reaching out to everyone.
The last link that is in there is titled Final School Days, and I want to set you up on what this is. So Rochester School District announced that the last day of school for students was May 15th. And, it was on WMUR and in the papers. And all of a sudden people anchored on the date, May 15th, which sounds like you're getting out of school in Missouri maybe, but not in New England, that's for sure. So people latched onto that and said, what are we doing? And so the list that you're looking at is what was sent out by the Superintendent's Association on Friday, and it asked people to speak to what the last day of school was going to be. And if you look at that list, you can see that right now Rochester is out there as an anomaly on the 15th. There's another district on the 29th, I think, over in Sanborn. And then everybody else is sort of into June 5th. And you see a lot of way after June 5th. I put in there that our last day currently is June 23rd. In talking with South Central superintendents, our general sense is that we need to have as many instructional days as we can under this model. And keep in mind that we've been told by DOE that if our membership of 180 days is less, so in other words, if we only have 179 days of school this year, then we give up 1/180th of our state aid, because it's all calculated based on what's called average daily membership, which is a misnomer. It's not about the number of kids attending, it's the number of days that we are in attendance with students. So that's the pickle that we have in looking at this, is that we stand, for example, I don't know if Rochester has decided to give up 20 days of state aid. And if they've made that choice, that's fine. That's their local decision. But for right now, our decision is to get in the 180 instructional days with students, because we think that's the right model to follow through on. So it's easy to anchor on that story and say they're doing it, we should do it too. When you look at that list, and I went and I looked at some of the June 5th schools, they started before Labor Day. That's a 5-day swing off of us, right? There were other holiday opportunities that they made during the year that we didn't. And so when you compare it out, our schedule our calendar is not really that much misaligned with others right now. Could that list change? Sure. Other boards are probably having the same conversation. They're going to make some decision about how to close out the school year. And so you may see a little bit of a shift, but I have made it clear with our associations that our intent is to have 180 days of school. The teachers work the 186 days that are in the contract. And we're in conversation about what does that look like with a student ratio, students attending. That's something that we can still try to engage on. But for right now, I would just ask the board not to anchor on those stories of the May 15th closures yet, because I think, we're waiting to see what the governor comes out with. Are there waivers of rules that haven't been made yet? Those are all the questions that we have to play with. So.
Oh, I don't think it's us. I think everybody saw it. And it's like, what the heck? What's going on in Litchfield? Hey, do you know what I mean? It wasn't us. I'd like to see their math, and I think it's fuzzy math if you ask me. You can cut your April vacation. When did they start? In July?
Yeah.
They go to school 12 hours a day?
But I know that Milford did ask for a waiver for their snow days. They asked them to see. So that's 3 days right there that we were planning to take out of April vacation. If we didn't have to do that and we can take them off the end of the year, I think we should go ahead and ask for that. We should apply for that waiver.
So one of the things that LEA has asked me to do is to bring to you the request to ask for the 3 snow days to be waived. And so I think that's something that the board has to decide, do you want to go? So what does that entail? It entails writing a letter to the state board saying that we're not going to be able to meet the instructional days this year and asking for the 3 snow days to be waived. That's something that the board can weigh in on and let us know that's what you want us to do. And then we'll go forward to it. It's, and you're right. And then if we work, because the parent, student, and staff response is that they want to have school on the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday of April break.
Right.
Or I shouldn't say the majority, again, 75% want to have school. So that's 3 extra days that we'll have in the bank. If you waive 3 snow days and work those 3 days, instead of getting out on June 18th, you're getting out on June 15th. So that's something. And then if we were to say, okay, we're kind of going to have a PD teacher work day at the end of the year that doesn't involve all students attending school, you could push that back potentially more, but that's all, again, all stuff that we have to engage in conversation and try to figure out.
People are getting tired. Kids are getting tired. I just can't, I'm weary as an educator, as a parent, as a school board member. I'm really weary. I just want to get this over with and not in a, well, you know what I mean? Like, follow the rules and just do the best we can do to get out as soon as we can by providing the best education we can while the kids are still somewhat engaged.
Yeah.
And the other link that's there for the board, if you take a look at it, if you run the math, remember the pickle has been the middle school because of the instructional hours that they have, right? So they require 180 days to hit the minimum standard of the 945 hours in grade 5 and 6. And they actually don't have enough instructional hours to hit the minimum standard, which I almost hate to say. We have to sit down and figure out what we're going to do with the middle school schedule because there's just not enough instructional time built in for grades 7 and 8. And
I know I'm sorry, Mike, go ahead.
so they need to actually add, what's the number in the chart? 15 days to the year in order to achieve the minimum standards. So we have to figure out what we're going to do at the middle school for next year because this just shows that it's not enough hours embedded in there. So then I agree with you, Liz, on the concept of fuzzy math because we're counting true instructional hours, not how long our school day is. And now with the remote learning, let's face it, instructional hours have been cut even further by the nature of what we're being asked to do right now. So
for some, I think for others, it's gotten more. And I'm specifically thinking of all the parents that I've gotten feedback from 7th and 8th grade specifically that their kids are working full days and longer than full days.
No, Tina, just to clarify, instructional hours, a teacher delivering instruction.
Yeah.
That direct delivery has been cut. I think the work for students has increased. But if to say that students are receiving instruction for 5.75 hours every day, I'm not sure that that's accurate.
It's not.
But maybe that's another waiver we have to ask for. If we can't make up those 8 days for the grade 7 and 8, then I think we need to include that in our waiver. We might as well ask if they can waive those 8 days, right?
But then we can go to hours.
Well, that's the other thing. If we go to hours and we add on how much or how many days are left till the end of school, so everybody else is done, how much time do we have to add on for grade 7 and 8? Because that's what Milford did. They added 15 minutes to their day in order to get out whatever it was first.
In remote learning?
Yeah.
See, again, that's not in the story, right? So you're adding 15 minutes to the day to get out sooner. But that's not the story. The story is Milford's ending on June, whatever. So, when you really start to dig into all these news stories about how they're doing it, there's way more to it.
Yeah.
And I don't know how adding 15 minutes in a remote environment even computes.
But if it helps our situation here in Litchfield, is it worth looking into doing that calculation at least? I don't know.
Yeah.
Moving forward, we clearly have to fix LMS time schedule. If you look at the hours, that GMS and CHS are putting in, it's not fair.
Well, I'd hope by Friday the governor's hoping to have some information out to us, and maybe some consistency will come down from the state, some actual direction.
Yeah.
I wouldn't comment.
That everybody can follow, because right now it's been like everything's local decision, local control.
Right.
We need to have a better idea of what he's going to decide.
Okay.
And Mary, can you just summarize? So have you heard the NPR story?
I've read it briefly. I didn't actually listen to it, but my mom down in Florida started blowing my phone up yesterday afternoon because we were now officially out of school for the rest of the year. And when I pushed a little bit, because I couldn't find that anywhere, what had happened is NPR ran an interview with Sununu where he stated that it was that we would most likely be out for the rest of the year, although no decisions had formally been made. So, people are starting to latch onto that, and that has become what we're doing. My mom, crazy old lady aside, I think that message is starting to come out more and more. Corey, I think you said this morning that you heard it someplace else as well.
Yeah, he was on the state emergency management call on Monday, and the fire chief reported back to the town emergency management that the governor had said that the outlook isn't good for schools returning. So,
yeah, so he's starting to put it out there to sort of, I think, prep everybody.
Oh, I wish you'd just say 165 days, be done.
Well, I just want us to have had a public discussion about it's easy to latch on to a number when there's way more to the story. The governor is going to tell us something by Friday. I'm committed to letting our parents and staff know by the Sunday announcement what April vacation looks like. So I'm hoping the governor does that. More likely, so I'm going to play the governor now and say, well, most likely we're going to have school on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday of April break, and have the 2 long weekends. And then what those 3 days, how they ultimately impact the end of the year, I can't answer that one yet, because it's going to all depend on, do we want to ask for a waiver of some days? Do we want to wait and see if more guidance comes along before we even ask for a waiver? I guess that's something the board has to give us the guidance on. I think waiting until the May 1st meeting to see where the rest of the guidance comes down makes some sense. We're going to treat our people right. We're going to do the right scheduling. It's just we need to know what all the rules are to decide what the right way to play this out is.
I propose you have a letter waiting on May 1st and pop it in the mail the minute you decide.
Well,
I'm all for waivers. Go waivers.
I'm wondering too because we've had to call some emergency meetings since we all went to remote learning. I'm wondering if maybe we should consider meeting next week instead of waiting for 2 weeks or waiting for the 1st of May, just because the status of our operations as a district are changing daily. So I didn't know, do you need us to meet more often so that we can make these kinds of decisions on the fly?
Even if we wait till May 1st, Tina, it's not going to really change anything. It's still, the days we're talking about are 7 weeks away.
No, I know. I'm wondering if I actually was.
I think too, again, the bigger picture of scheduling, right? So let's talk to high school. So the high school appears to have 15 extra days above and beyond the instructional hours. But then they administer the SAT and take an early release day in October. And they have a final exam schedule in January that's not really instructional hours. It's testing, it's assessment, but there's not instruction taking place. And they do the same thing in June. So when you add up all those days, you quickly get yourself back to the instructional hours that are there. And then Griffin is the one where I think there's almost 8 days over. And those are probably how many is it, Tina?
It's 12.
I think I just saw it was 13.
13 days over. You know,
GMS is 13, which is ludicrous.
you know, and then so then the question is, and I think it's totally different at the elementary level in terms of what does the instructional days mean. There certainly are events that take place there that are maybe less of instruction model, but they're still learning for students at that grade. So it's a harder thing to try to parse out, I guess.
So, and we can't end certain schools on certain days, right? They all just because of the LEA contract, and do we need to end them all together?
Yeah, you want to make somebody into the real bad guy say that, you know, the high school is done here, but the middle school has to add 15 more days or whatever. I mean, that's a really tough one, Tara. It's a good point, but that's.
I was just particularly thinking of the elementary school and the struggles that I've heard from a lot of the, working parents who have young ones at home, that it's just such a challenge because they really need that supervision while they're on the computer or doing their activities.
I'm not going that route.
So there's the kind of the landscape painted. I mean, at this point, if you're comfortable, you know where we're headed. April vacation. Wait for the governor. If we can wait until May 1st, I mean, that still would give people a month's notice of what we might have the end of the year look like. And I'm just hoping we have a little more guidance or clarity on it. And then just one last piece on this COVID stuff is the high school is still talking, actually all the schools are talking about all the rites of passage that you have at the end of the year. We're trying to find a way to figure all these pieces out. So I know Bill and Mike have been engaged with the seniors about graduation, prom, all those events that are so important in a student's life, trying to figure those out. The same thing is happening at the elementary and the middle schools. When Mary and I had we had lunch and afternoon snack with teachers today where they could just come in and talk to us about what's going on, questions that they have. They were great open forums. But one thing was just like you always have the move up day. It's almost like in the fall, we might have to have a go back day to bring closure to the year because our schools are kind of like Twilight Zone sets right now where I was in a high school classroom and it had a shamrock tree in the corner because they decorated the tree on the Friday before St. Patty's Day in anticipation of some sort of a celebration that didn't take place. And so now you have this, this April shamrock tree sitting in the corner of the room. So it's definitely a weird scenario that we're in, and we're trying to find our way to how do we do all of this and get everybody back safely into clean schools with, cleaned and sanitized environments. It's going to be a real interesting piece that there's, in my opinion, no way we're going to pull off in June. And we've got a ton of work to figure out how to pull off in August and September.
So actually, I would just like to kind of echo Tina in that I was actually thinking, we've been meeting every other week, and it seems to be just where we seem to be on a good pattern. I was going to suggest, especially, if we're, working Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, if those are school days during April vacation, to have our next school board meeting then, and then we just kind of shift the rest of them up a week so that instead of finishing on June 17th, we finish on the 10th, just as a thought.
You know what I didn't realize? I had to pull April up to look at it on my calendar, but you're right. So there's 5 Wednesdays in April. So this is one of those extra lags. So we can look to schedule just to do a touch base, because otherwise waiting until it's actually May 6th. I didn't realize it was that far out.
Yeah.
So let us see where we land. And, even if we have an abbreviated agenda, and now that we have the remote piece down, we can easily snap in.
I get a kick out of the word abbreviated being used with anything to do with our school board.
I'm glad we started at 5.
I know.
Or tried to.
All right. What's up?
Yep.
All right. And just a reminder, if you have not stopped by the high school for the manifest, that they are ready.
You do need to get buzzed in. It's sitting right on the counter in the main office, so they'll let you in to review it.
I'll go tomorrow if you need me to.
Yeah, I'm just swinging by
I
tomorrow
will
too.
signatures.
I don't
I
think
can go tomorrow at 11.
has anybody done it? I don't think anybody's done it yet. So we need
tomorrow.
Yeah.
What time's somebody there, Mike?
They are there from 7 to 1, I think. They close at 1.
Actually, maybe I'll try and go over about 7:30, 8 o'clock then. Get it out of the way.
I will not be there that early.
8 to
I
1?
will be there probably a 1:15.
So it's probably 8 to 1. But 8 to 1 would be best.
Okay.
I could go on Friday if need be. Just let me know. Not tomorrow though.
All right. So the last thing, Michelle, if you could, for me, please send to the budget committee the cost savings report, the DA report, and the enrollment report.
I will do that.
Thank you. All right, that'll bring us to non-public session, RSA 91-A:311. The dismissal, promotion, or compensation of any public employee, or the disciplining of such employee, or the investigation of any charges against him unless the employee affected, 1, has a right to a meeting, and 2, requests that the meeting be open, in which case the request shall be granted. B, the hiring of any person as a public employee. C, matters which if discussed in public would likely affect adversely the reputation of any person other than a member of the body of the agency itself, unless such person requests an open meeting. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Tina?
I said yes.
Well, I got to do it by roll call. Rob?
Yep.
Liz? Liz?
You got to unmute, Liz.
Good meeting.
Tara?
Yeah.
Yes.
Liz?
What?
And Brian's a yes. So,
Bye,
one
everyone.
second.
Good night.
No, one
Good
thing.
night.
Thank you so much.
So just one thing before,
5-minute break.
We will in 1 second.
yeah. So
Oh, okay.
just 2 quick things before we go into non-public. I just want to let the public know we will not be coming back into public, so we will not have any discussion in public after we come out of non-public. And the other thing is I want to thank, as I did last week, both Rob Fay and Jason for being here and assisting us and helping us as far as for the broadcast. And we appreciate it. We're now in non-public.